Hey guys, it's Nemo again. Just want to say thanks for tuning in again. I hope you enjoy these new Tinder stories. And guys, just let me know how you guys are feeling about the channel. If you want to hear some new things, let us know in the comments. Be sure to like and subscribe for more videos just like this. So, thanks again for tuning. Let's get into it.
I still remember the exact second my stomach dropped, and it was when the cops showed up. It was earlier, way earlier, back when everything felt light and stupid and normal, like one of those nights you expect to forget by next week. I had just finished a long shift, my head buzzing, scrolling through Tinder like muscle memory, not even really looking, just swiping. Her profile stuck for no reason. No big bio, no dramatic pics, just a couple blurry shots and a smile that felt real instead of practiced. I didn't think much of it. That's kind of the point. Nothing about that night felt important until it suddenly was. We matched fast. It didn't turn into one of those endless message chains that die out. It moved quick but not weird quick. Same city, same boredom, same jokes about bad coffee places and broken bus routes. We picked a spot halfway between us, some late night food place attached to a bowling alley that barely functioned. I was nervous. I didn't tell anyone where I was going because it felt harmless. Just a date, just a Tuesday. The place smelled like greased and old carpet cleaner. Lights too bright, music too loud, everything slightly off. She showed up wearing a hoodie that looked borrowed and jeans with frayed hems. She looked smaller in person, not fragile, just compact, like she took up less space than she could if she wanted. I remember thinking she looked tired in a way I recognized. Not sad, just worn down. That made me relax. We sat in a booth near the back. I kept my phone face down like I always do. She didn't. She kept hers in her hand at first, flipping it over and over, like she couldn't decide where to put it. I noticed because I notice dumb stuff when I'm bored or anxious. She laughed at my jokes even when they weren't funny. She talked about her job in chunks, like she was skipping pages. Nothing felt fake. That's what messes with me now. Halfway through, she asked me to hold her phone for a second. No build up, no reason given, just a quick motion, like passing a napkin. She said her hands were sticky from the food. It felt normal. I didn't even think about it. I took it and set it on the table near me. The screen lit up for a second, then went dark. I didn't look. I swear I didn't. I wasn't curious. It was just a phone. We ate, we joked. We complained about the music. I slid the phone closer to me so it wouldn't fall. At some point, I picked it up and shifted it into my jacket pocket because I was getting up to grab napkins. I didn't think about fingerprints or screens or anything like that. I just did it. It stayed there for maybe 5 minutes, maybe less. Time stretches weird when you replay it. She took it back without comment, thanked me, wiped her hands, put it on the table again. The rest of the day drifted. Not bad, not amazing. Just okay. When we left, the parking lot was damp and empty, the kind of quiet that makes your ears ring. We hugged, quick and awkward. She said she'd text me. She didn't. The next day felt heavy for no reason. I woke up late, phone buzzing with spam and nothing else. I went about my routine. Class, bus, cheap food, scrolling. I noticed her match still there, no message. I didn't push it. People ghost all the time. That's Tinder. You shrug and move on. 2 days later, there was a knock at my door. Not a casual knock, firm, spaced out, like someone who expected it to be answered. I was still in sweatpants, half asleep. I opened it without checking. 2 officers stood there. Neutral faces, hands visible, not aggressive, just serious. My brain lagged behind the moment. I remember thinking maybe someone in the building complained about noise. They asked my name. I nodded. They asked if they could come in. I didn't know how to say no. My apartment suddenly felt smaller, messier. They didn't sit. They stood near the door like they were planning to stay long. One of them asked if I recognized a photo. It was her. Same putty, same face. My throat went dry. They asked when I last saw her. I told them. I tried to keep my voice even. They asked where. I told them. They asked if I had touched her phone. I laughed before I could stop myself. Not because it was funny, but because it sounded absurd. Then I saw their faces didn't change. They'd explained slowly like they had done it before. Her phone had been found in a car connected to a violent incident the night after our date. The car wasn't hers. Neither was the place it was found. The phone had been used shortly before. Messages sent. Location tracked. They were following the trail backward. My fingerprints were on it. Clear ones. I told them the truth. Every detail I could remember. How she asked me to hold it. How long I had it. Where I put it. How I didn't look at it. They wrote things down. They asked the same questions in different ways. I started doubting my own memory. Was it really 5 minutes? Did I check the time? Did I unlock it by accident? Did it light up when I touched it? I didn't know anymore. They took my phone. They asked for my jacket. They asked about my live situation, who had keys, who had been over. It felt unreal, like a prank that had gone too far. My hands would stop sweating. I kept wiping them on my pants, then realizing how that looked. After they left, the apartment was silent in a way that felt hostile. I sat on the floor because I did trust my legs. I replayed the date over and over, searching for cracks, little moments that suddenly felt sharp. The way she kept flipping her phone, how quickly she handed it to me, how calm she was, how she disappeared after. Days blurred. I read articles about cases where tiny details ruined lives. I read forums where people argued about innocence and chance. I couldn't eat. Every sound outside made my chest tighten. I checked my door lock 3 times before sleeping, then woke up convinced someone had been inside anyway. They called me in for questioning again. Same room, same tone. They told me they found other prints too, but mine were clean, not smudged. That word stuck with me. Clean, like I had meant to leave them. They asked if I had met her before. I had. They asked if I knew her real name. I didn't. Tinder only showed a first name. Maybe not even a real one. Eventually they let me go. Not cleared, just not held. The case kept moving. Her name showed up in the news weeks later, tied to stuff that didn't make sense next to the girl I met. Accomplice. Stolen car. Missing person report filed by someone else entirely. The phone was part of it, a breadcrumb she dropped on purpose or by accident. I'll never know which. Nothing happened to me legally after that, not officially, but things still changed. My landlord acted weird. My job cut my hours. Someone had talked. Maybe a neighbor saw the cops. Maybe rumors filled in the gaps. I stopped using Tinder. I stopped meeting new people. I stopped trusting small moments. Sometimes I think about that phone sitting in my pocket, warm from her hand, heavy in a way I didn't notice. A device is just glass and metal until it isn't, until it becomes a story you can't step out of. I didn't learn a lesson. I didn't grow. I just moved forward with a quieter version of myself, always aware of where my hands are, what they touch, what they might leave behind. I didn't even mean to go on a date that night. It started as one of those bored scrolls where your thumb keeps moving even though your brain already checked out. I was laying on my bed, half dressed, fan rattling, ceiling stains shaped like nothing. Her profile popped up and it felt different in a lazy way. Not exciting, not intense. Just calm. Her name on Tinder was Leela. Simple, soft. It fit her face. I remember thinking it sounded like someone who didn't cause trouble. We talked for a few days. Nothing deep, nothing flirty in a gross way. Just dumb comments about bad weather, late buses, places that close too early. She used a lot of lowercase like me. I liked that. It felt relaxed. She suggested we meet at this old mini golf place that stayed open late and served snacks out of a shack. I hadn't been there since I was a kid. The idea felt random enough to be safe. The night of the date felt off from the start, but not in a warning way. More like when your sock is twisted in your shoe and you keep walking anyway. The air was thick, bugs sticking to everything. The place was lit with those harsh white lights that make everyone look tired. She was already there when I arrived, sitting on a plastic bench scrolling. She looked like her photos, but more real, less filtered, more sharp around the eyes. She smiled when she saw me. Not big, just quick. We got our clubs and balls and started playing. I noticed right away she didn't talk much at first. Not rude, just careful. Like she was listening more than she was sharing. I filled the space because I always do. I talked about school, work, random stuff that didn't matter. She nodded, laughed at the right times. Nothing felt wrong. Halfway through the course, near the fake windmill hole, something shifted. I didn't catch it right away. Just a slight tension. She checked her phone more. Her replies got shorter. I thought maybe she was bored. Maybe I was talking too much. I tried to relax, slow down, let the silence sit. After we finished, we grabbed fries and sat at a picnic table off to the side. The table was sticky. I wiped my hands on my jeans without thinking. She took her food and lined the packets neatly like it mattered. I remember noticing how focused she was on small things. The way she folded the napkin. The way she placed her phone face down but kept it close. I don't know why I said it. That's the part that keeps looping. My brain didn't warn me. My mouth just moved. I was telling a story about my cousin who works at a clinic downtown, the one near that thrift store with the blue sign. I mentioned how I had been there once with a friend named Marie. I met Marie, I swear I did, but the name that came out was that. I used her real name. It slipped out like it had always belonged there. The second it happened, I felt it. That drop in the stomach. That cold flash behind the eyes. I knew instantly it was wrong. I had never heard her say that name. Not once. Not in messages, not in person. But I had read it. Weeks before. I had read it without realizing I remembered it. Her body froze. Not dramatic, not obvious. Just still. Like someone hit pause. Her eyes didn't go wide. They narrowed just a little. Her hand stopped halfway to her mouth. Time stretched thin and quiet. I kept talking for maybe 2 seconds before my brain caught up and slammed into panic. She didn't ask how I knew. She didn't correct me. She didn't smile it off. She just stared at me like she was measuring the space between us. I tried to backtrack without making it worse. I changed the subject too fast. I laughed when nothing was funny. My voice sounded wrong to my own ears. Inside my head, everything was loud. I replayed our messages, scrolling through memory like screenshots. Then it hit me. Her Instagram. She had linked it on Tinder at first, then removed it later. I had clicked it out of curiosity on day one. Her handle was different, but her real name had been right there in the bio. I hadn't thought about it since. I didn't even follow her, but my brain kept it anyway, tucked somewhere it shouldn't have been. She stood up before finishing her food, said she felt sick. I nodded too hard. I told her it was fine. She walked toward the exit without looking back. I sat there alone, fries going cold, bugs circling the light above the table. People laughed on the course like nothing had happened. I waited a few minutes before leaving. I didn't want to look like I was chasing her. The parking lot was almost empty when I finally walked out. Her car was gone. My phone buzzed once on the way home. It was Tinder, unmatched. That should have been the end of it. Awkward date, my fault, lesson learned. But it didn't stop there. 2 nights later, I got a message from an unknown number. No greeting, just a screenshot. It was my own Tinder profile, cropped tight around my face. Below it, a list. My school, my job, my apartment building. Things I had never told her. Things I didn't even mention online. My chest went hollow. I sat on my bed staring at the screen until it dimmed. I didn't reply. I didn't block it. I just waited. More messages came over the next week. Not threats. Not insults. Just facts. Places I had been. Times I left my building. What I wore to work one day. What I bought at the corner store for $6. It felt like being studied. Like I had stepped into someone else's routine without permission. I tried to think logically. She could have followed me. She could have searched my name. But I never gave her my last name. My Tinder didn't link anything. My socials were private. The only mistake I made was remembering her real name. I read back through our old messages from memory. She never shared anything personal. No job details. No friends. No stories with names. She kept herself flat on purpose. I had thought it was just her personality. Now it felt like strategy. One night, I noticed someone sitting in a car across the street from my place. Engine off, lights dark. Maybe coincidence. Maybe not. I didn't check. I closed my curtains and sat on the floor away from the windows. My phone buzzed again. Another photo. This time it was my building entrance, taken from outside. I moved out 2 weeks later, told my landlord I needed to live closer to campus, packed fast, stayed with a friend for a bit. The messages stopped after that. No goodbye. No explanation. Just silence like a switch flipped. Months passed. Life filled back in. Classes. Work. Noise. But sometimes I still think about how easy it was. How one name said wrong opened something I couldn't close. She never told me her real name because she didn't want it used. And the second I proved I had it, I wasn't a stranger anymore. I was a problem. I haven't used Tinder since. Not out of fear exactly. More like respect for how thin the surface is. Some people aren't there to meet you. They are there to see how much you notice, how much you remember, how much you slip. I didn't feel excited getting ready that night. It was more like momentum, like when you already put your shoes on, so you might as well leave. Tinder had been background noise for weeks, faces blurring together, bios saying the same thing in different orders. Then hers showed up on a slow afternoon when my phone battery was low and my brain was worse. Her pictures were plain, almost boring, which somehow made them stick. No heavy posing, no dramatic filters, just a normal girl in different lighting. Her name was Erin, or at least that was what Tinder said. Nothing flashy, nothing trying too hard. We talked for a bit, short messages spaced out like neither of us wanted to seem too available. She asked a lot of questions, but they didn't feel intense. Stuff about my schedule, who I hung out with, what I did after work. I did think twice. People asked that stuff. I asked some back. Her answers were always brief but polite. No red flags, just neutral. We met at a late night diner on the edge of town, the kind of place truckers stop at and college kids end up in after midnight. The sign outside flickered like it was tired. Inside smelled like burnt coffee and cleaning spray. Booths torn, floor sticky, lights buzzing overhead. It felt public enough to be safe but quiet enough to talk. She was already there when I walked in, sitting near the window, phone face up on the table. She looked almost exactly like her photos. Same hair, same tired eyes, same neutral expression. She smiled when she saw me, but it didn't reach far. Not cold, just measured. I slid into the booth across from her. Vinyl squeaked under me. My phone stayed in my pocket. Hers didn't. Right away, I noticed she kept it angled slightly toward herself. Screen dimmed, but active. Every few minutes it would light up. Not with notifications, but like she was tapping something. She was scrolling social media. There was no endless flicking. It was more precise. Tap, pause, lock. Tap again later. We ordered food and waited. She asked me about my job. I answered like I always do, complaining a little, joking a little. When I finished talking, she glanced down and tapped her phone once. I thought maybe she was making a note, like people do when they have bad memory. I didn't care. Then she asked about my friends, how many I had, how often I saw them, whether I lived alone or with roommates. I answered honestly. Again, when I finished, she tapped her phone. Same motion, same timing. My stomach twitched, but I ignored it. Food came, fries and a burger that looked sad. I ate too fast. She barely touched hers. She kept asking questions, spaced out, never rushed, about my family, about past relationships, not details, just how long they lasted, about how I handled stress. Every answer ended the same way. Her eyes dropped, her thumb moved, tap. I finally leaned forward a little, trying to see the screen without being obvious. The reflection in the window behind her helped more than I expected. I couldn't read everything, but I saw a list. Boxes, clean lines, white background, black text. Each item had a square next to it. Some were checked, some empty. One of them said anger. My chest tightened. I blinked and looked away, telling myself I misread it. Diners reflect weird. Glass warps things. I focused on my food again, chewing slower this time. She asked another question, this one about whether I liked being alone or preferred company. I answered carefully, suddenly aware of my tone, my posture, my hands. Tap. I glanced again, more directly this time. She didn't hide it. She didn't angle the phone away. It was like she assumed I wouldn't look, or if I did, it wouldn't matter. The list was clearer now. Stacked words, evenly spaced. Anger had a check next to it now. Below it was compliance. Below that was isolation. There were more, but those were the ones I caught before my heart started beating too loud. I stopped talking as much. I started giving shorter answers, neutral ones, nothing emotional. She watched me closely when I spoke, not like interest, more like observation, like she was listening for something specific. I felt like I was being tested without knowing the rules. She asked about my routine, what time I woke up, what time I got home, whether I'd like spontaneous plans or preferred knowing ahead of time. Each question felt harmless alone. Together, they stacked up heavy. Every answer got logged. Tap, tap, tap. I wondered if it was some weird study, a psychology thing. Maybe she was in school. Maybe this was some project she didn't mention. But why Tinder? Why a diner at midnight? Why me? I excused myself to the bathroom just to get away from the booth. The mirror above the sink made my face look pale. I splashed water on my wrists. My hands were shaking. I told myself to leave. Just stand up, walk out, block her, done. But my legs felt glued. Curiosity pulled harder than fear. I wanted to know what the list was for. When I got back, she had checked another box. I didn't know which one. She looked up at me like nothing had changed. The phone stayed on the table. She asked if I had ever felt like people depended on me too much. I answered without thinking and said sometimes. Tap. She asked how I'd reacted when plans changed last minute. I said I adjusted. Tap. She asked if I trusted people easily. I said not really. Tap. I caught another word this time. Vulnerability. Unchecked. My throat went dry. The diner felt smaller, louder, like the walls leaned in. I realized she wasn't just collecting information. She was sorting it, measuring me against something I couldn't see, some kind of profile, some kind of threshold. I leaned back, crossed my arms, stopped volunteering extra details. My answers turned flat. She noticed immediately. Her eyes narrowed slightly. She asked if I was uncomfortable. I said I was tired. She nodded, tapped the phone again. Maybe marking deflection. Maybe marking awareness. The checkboxes started filling faster after that, like my resistance was part of it, like it counted. I didn't finish my food. Neither did she. Eventually, she said she had to go. Stood up, slipped her phone into her pocket. I stood too, awkward, unsure. We walked out together into the parking lot. The air was cold and damp. She headed toward a dark sedan parked near the back. I went the opposite way. My phone buzzed before I even reached my car. Tinder notification. She had unmatched me. Relief washed through me so hard I laughed out loud. I sat in my car for a minute, breathing, hands on the wheel, telling myself it was over. It wasn't. The next morning, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. No greeting. Just a screenshot. It was a checklist. Zoomed in. Clear as day. My stomach dropped. Anger was checked. Compliance was half-shaded. Isolation was unchecked. Vulnerability still empty. Next to each word was a small number. Scores. Below the list was a line that said insufficient match. That was it. No explanation. No threat. Just a verdict. I deleted the email. Blocked the address. Changed my passwords even though I didn't know how she got my email. I went about my day pretending nothing happened. But I noticed things after that. Little pauses when people asked me questions. Moments where I wondered if I was being evaluated. Every time my phone screen lit up unexpectedly, my heart jumped. A week later, I read a post online about a guy who met someone on a dating app who worked for a private research group. Behavioral sorting. Early screening. It could have been fake. Probably was. But the details lined up too well. I never saw her again. Never got another message. But sometimes when I'm out in public, I catch someone tapping their phone after I speak, and my chest tightens before I can stop it. I wonder what boxes I still fill. I wonder what I almost qualified for. I knew something was off before we even met, but it didn't hit like fear. It hit like that feeling when your phone vibrates in your pocket and there is nothing there when you check. Small, confusing, easy to ignore. I had matched with her earlier that week, late night, half asleep, thumb sore from scrolling. Her profile didn't try hard. No big captions, no jokes that someone copied, just a couple photos taken in bad lighting and a name that felt real enough. I didn't expect anything from it, which is probably why I said yes so easily. We picked a spot near the Riverwalk, one of those outdoor bar places that pretends it's chill but blasts music too loud. I got there early because I hate rushing. I stood near the railing watching the water move slow and dark, checking my phone more than I needed to. She texted she was calling an Uber. Normal. Nothing weird. I didn't think about it again. She arrived a few minutes later, walking up from the street, phone in hand. She looked like her pictures but sharper, like the camera had softened something that wasn't soft in real life. Not mean, just alert. She smiled, quick and practiced. We did the usual awkward greeting and found a spot to stand with our drinks. The night was warm, bugs floating near the lights, music thumping through the deck. Conversation flowed fine at first. Nothing deep. Work, school, dumb stuff about how the place overcharges for drinks. I noticed she checked her phone a lot, but everyone does. I didn't read into it. I leaned against the railing and talked with my hands like always. She watched me closely when I spoke, eyes tracking every movement like she was following instructions. About 20 minutes in, she stepped slightly away and glanced at her phone again. I saw the Uber screen for a second. I didn't mean to, it was just there. Map glowing, little car icon moving. Without thinking, I told her which car was coming. Not the color, not the driver name. I told her it was the same one that always misses the first turn by the bakery and ends up circling back. The words fell out of my mouth like muscle memory. The second I finished saying it, my brain caught up and slammed on the brakes. I felt heat rush to my face. I hadn't looked at her screen long enough to know that. I had asked where she was being picked up. I definitely should not have known the route. She didn't react right away. That was the worst part. She just stared at me for a second too long, then looked back at her phone. Her thumb hovered. The car on the screen paused, then turned down the wrong street. I laughed awkwardly, tried to brush it off, but there was nothing to brush it off with. No joke followed. No explanation. My mouth went dry. She looked up slowly, her expression flat, unreadable. Not angry, not scared, calculating. She asked how I knew that. I didn't answer right away because my brain was scrambling. There was no good answer. I had been stalking her. I hadn't followed her. I didn't even know where she lived. All I could think was that I had seen that route before. The bakery. The missed turn. But that didn't make it better. I tried to explain without making it worse. I talked too much. I said I used Uber a lot in that area. I said drivers mess up there all the time. I said it without confidence and I could hear it. My voice sounded wrong, higher, rushed. She listened without interrupting, eyes still, phone held tight in her hand. She didn't say she believed me. She didn't say she didn't. She just nodded once and slipped the phone into her pocket. The vibe shifted hard. Conversation after that felt like walking on a cracked sidewalk. Every step careful, every word measured. I became hyper-aware of everything I did, where my eyes went, how close I stood, how often I smiled. I suggested we get food from a truck nearby. She agreed, but walked a few steps ahead of me, enough space to notice. We stood in line under harsh lights. I could feel people around us, but it felt like we were in a bubble of tension. She barely spoke. I didn't know what to say without sounding worse. While we waited, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and glanced at it. Her shoulders tightened. She didn't show me the screen, but I saw the glow reflect on her face. She put it away quickly and told me she had to leave soon. I nodded too fast. When the food came, she barely touched it. She kept checking the street like she was waiting for something. I tried to act normal, eating, commenting on the music, but it all felt fake. My mind kept replaying the moment by the railing. How easily I had said it. How natural it felt. Like I had known before knowing. She said her Uber was close. I didn't ask which one. I didn't ask anything. We walked back toward the street where she had arrived. Cars passed, headlights flashing. I kept my hands in my pockets so she would think I was reaching for anything. Then I did it again. Without thinking, without meaning to, I mentioned that the driver would probably stop short of the curb and block traffic for a second before pulling over properly. I didn't even realize I was talking until I saw her stop walking. This time there was no delay. She turned toward me fully. Her eyes were sharp now, focused, not confused, not curious. Alarmed, she took a step back. Her hand tightened around her phone. She asked me what I was doing. The way she asked wasn't loud, but it cut through the noise around us. I froze. My heart was pounding so hard I felt dizzy. I tried to backpedal, but everything sounded like an excuse. I kept saying I didn't mean it like that I just noticed patterns, that it was a coincidence. The word coincidence sounded stupid the second it left my mouth. She shook her head slowly, not angry, disappointed, like she had confirmed something she already suspected. She told me to stay where I was. Then she walked away toward the corner, eyes scanning the street. I stood there like an idiot watching her create distance. People passed between us. Laughter. Music. The normal world continuing while mine tilted. I didn't follow her. I couldn't. My legs felt heavy. I didn't know if moving would make things worse. An Uber pulled up a minute later. Dark set in. Hazard lights blinking. It stopped too far from the curb, blocking traffic for a second. My stomach dropped. I felt sick. She opened the door, paused, and looked back at me one last time. Not scared. Not angry, just wary. Then she got in and the car pulled away, correcting itself into the lane. I stood there long after she left. I didn't know what to do with my hands. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Tinder notification. Unmatched. Relief and dread hit at the same time. I walked home instead of calling a ride. Needed the air. Needed to feel my feet hit the ground. My brain kept replaying everything, searching for how I could have known. Maybe I had glanced at her screen longer than I thought. Maybe I had seen the route earlier somehow. Maybe my brain filled in gaps and got lucky twice. None of it felt solid. The next day, I got a message request on a different app. Blank profile, no photo, just text. It listed the exact time of our date, the location, the two things I had said about the Uber, then a line that made my chest go tight. It said that predictive familiarity was not attractive. Nothing else. No threads. No explanation. Just that. I blocked the account immediately, changed my settings, locked everything down. I told myself it was over. Just a weird date. A misunderstanding that spiraled. But the phrase stuck with me. Predictive familiarity. Like there was a word for what I did. Like someone had seen it before. Weeks later, I still think about it when I use ride apps. When I watch the little car move across the map. When it makes a wrong turn. I never comment on it anymore. I keep everything to myself. Some patterns are better left unnoticed, especially when someone else realizes you see them too. The night started with one of those tiny decisions that feels invisible until it ruins the shape of everything. I remember standing in my room, phone in my hand, rereading her last message and thinking I could still cancel. Not because she seemed strange, but because I felt flat. Tired in that bored way where nothing feels worth leaving the house for. I went anyway. I always do. I told myself I needed to get out, that sitting alone scrolling was better. That choice still annoys me more than anything else about what happened. We met near the old bus depot downtown, the one that smells like oil and hot concrete even after dark. There was a coffee place next to it that stayed open late for students and night shift workers. It had uneven lighting and chairs that never matched. She picked it because it was quiet. That alone felt like a relief. No loud music, no crowds, just a few people hunched over laptops and half-empty cups. She was already there when I walked in, sitting near the back wall. Her phone was on the table, screen down, hands folded neatly around a mug. She looked calm, not nervous, not overly friendly. Calm in a way that made me relax my shoulders without noticing. We smiled at each other and sat down. No awkward pause. No rush. It felt easy. Conversation came naturally. We talked about school, about how weird downtown feels at night, about places that used to be open and aren't anymore. She listened closely, nodding, asking follow-ups that made sense. Nothing felt forced. I remember thinking it was nice not having to perform. A few minutes in, she picked up her phone and set it upright against her cup, camera side facing us. She didn't say anything about it. I'd assumed she was checking messages or using it as a clock. People do that. I didn't question it. She asked if I wanted to stay longer. I said yes without thinking because I did. I liked the quiet. I liked the pace. Right after I answered, she reached out and tapped her screen once. Quick, deliberate. Then she set the phone back down. I noticed it but brushed it off. Maybe she was replying to someone. Maybe she was adjusting the brightness. It didn't feel important enough to call out. We ordered refills. She paid without making it weird. I thanked her and offered to get the next one. She smiled and said maybe later. Then she asked if I minded sitting closer because the outlet by her seat wasn't working and her phone battery was low. I said yes again, sliding my chair over. Tap. This time I felt it. Not fear exactly, but awareness. Like a camera shutter going off in my head. The tapping was too clean. Question, answer, tap. I glanced at the phone. The screen lit up for a second and I saw a waveform. A short one. Blue line on a dark background. Then it disappeared. My stomach tightened. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to be rude. I didn't want to accuse someone of something without knowing. I told myself it was a voice memo for herself, maybe notes. People record reminders all the time. She kept asking small things, harmless things. If I was okay with staying past closing since they usually let people linger. If I wanted to walk around a bit after. If I was cool with checking out the little park behind the depot. Each time I answered yes. Each time she tapped the phone right after. I started choosing my words more carefully, stretching out my answers, adding extra sentences. She waited patiently, eyes on me, but her finger only moved when I clearly agreed. Not when I hesitated, not when I explained, only on yes. The realization crept in slow and heavy. She was recording conversation. She was collecting confirmations. I tried to shift things. I asked her questions, tried to take control of the flow. She answered but kept it brief. She brought it back around to me quickly, but the focus was supposed to drift. When I asked what she was doing on her phone, she smiled and said she liked keeping things organized. That was it. No elaboration. We left the coffee place together when the lights dimmed. Outside, the air was cooler, the street mostly empty. The bus depot lights hummed. She asked if I was okay walking her a bit since it was late. I paused. Thought about it. Said yes anyway because saying no felt dramatic, and I didn't have a reason that made sense yet. Tap. We walked side by side, not touching. Our steps echoed on the sidewalk. She didn't talk much now. She seemed focused, almost relaxed. I kept thinking about the waveforms, about how easy it would be to cut a clean yes out of background noise. Halfway to the park, she slowed down and asked if I minded stopping for a second. I said yes out of habit, then immediately wished I had. She lifted her phone again, held it slightly closer this time, and tapped. I finally asked what she was saving. My voice sounded calm, but my chest was tight. She didn't stop walking. She said it was just personal stuff, that she liked having records. She said people forget what they agree to. She said this like it was a general statement, not about me, like she was explaining a hobby. The park was empty, benches dark, trees whispering overhead. She sat down and patted the space next to her. I didn't sit. I stayed standing. She looked up at me, curious, not offended. She asked if I wanted to sit. I said maybe later. She didn't tap the phone this time. That confirmed it. We stood there in silence for a moment. I told her I was going to head home. She asked if I could stay just a few more minutes. I said no, my heart was racing. She nodded, understanding, and put the phone in her pocket without recording anything. We walked back toward the street. When we reached the corner where we would split off, she stopped and thanked me for coming out. She said she appreciated my time. She didn't ask for a hug. She didn't ask for anything else. She just stood there, watching me. I went home and couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying the taps, the timing, the pattern. I opened my phone and read about audio consent laws, about how short clips can be stitched together. I tried to calm myself down, telling myself I was overthinking, telling myself it was just weird, not dangerous. The next morning, I got a message from an unknown number. No greeting, just an audio file attached. My hands shook as I pressed play. It was my voice. Clear, close, no background noise, just me saying yes. Then another file, yes again. Then another. Each one was saved separately, labeled with timestamps. I didn't respond. I blocked the number. I deleted the files. My chest hurt for hours afterward, like I had been holding my breath too long. 2 days later, I got an email notification from a cloud service I didn't recognize. It said new shared folder. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I knew what was in there. I changed my number, locked down my accounts, told myself to move on. Nothing bad happened right away. No threats, no demands. Just the knowledge that somewhere someone had a clean collection of my agreements, stripped of context, ready to be used however they wanted. Weeks passed. Life filled back in. But every time someone asks me something now, even something small, I hesitate. I feel my mouth shake the word and stop. I think about how easy it is to give permission without realizing what you're giving it to. I'd never heard from her again. No follow-up. No explanation. Just silence. Sometimes that's worse. Sometimes that means the thing already served its purpose. I didn't notice the pattern at first because it didn't feel like a pattern. It felt like coincidence, like bad posture, like crowded rooms doing what crowded rooms do. I remember thinking that if I had just picked a different table or leaned a different way, none of it would have stood out. That's the part that messes with me. How easy it was to explain away while it was happening. We matched on Tinder late one night when I couldn't sleep. My room was hot, phone screen bright, my brain buzzing. His profile looked harmless. Gym pics, mirror selfies, nothing clever in the bio. Just confident in a way that felt common. I wasn't excited, just bored enough to answer. We talked for a few days. Nothing deep. He liked to joke about being direct. I thought that meant honest. We met at a rooftop arcade bar that always smelled like spilled drinks and old carpet. Neon lights, sticky floors, games blaring noise from every corner. I liked it because it was public and busy. Hard for anything weird to happen in a place like that. I got there first and leaned against a tall table near the wall, watching people play games and lose tickets. He showed up late, smiling like he owned the room. He stood closer than I expected, but I told myself it was loud and he was just trying to hear me. I shifted a little to the side. He followed without thinking, like magnets snapping back together. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to make it awkward. We grabbed drinks and moved toward the game area. I noticed he kept angling his body toward mine, cutting off the space he tried to keep. Every time I stepped back, he stepped forward. Not fast, not aggressive, just enough to stay close. I laughed it off in my head, told myself he was just into me. We played a game where you throw balls at lights. I leaned away to throw better. He leaned in behind me to watch. I stepped to the side. He adjusted. My shoulder brushed the wall. I felt the cool surface through my shirt. He smiled like this was progress. I moved again, pretending to check the score screen. He followed. His hand brushed the table near my hip, not touching me, but close enough to notice. My back met the wall again. This time I felt trapped for half a second before I slid past him. He laughed and said something about the vibe being strong. I smiled, because that's what I always do when I don't know how to react. As the night went on, the space around me kept shrinking. We moved to a quieter corner near the stairs. I stood with my arms crossed. He stood closer. I stepped back. Wall. I took a sip of my drink to give my hand something to do. He leaned in to talk. I leaned out. He matched it. It felt like a slow dance I never agreed to. I started testing it. I shifted my weight to one foot, then the other. He mirrored me. I stepped sideways. He blocked without touching me. I took a step back. Wall again. Every move I made, he countered it softly, smoothly, like he had practiced without knowing he practiced. I told myself to leave. I told myself to say I was tired. But part of me froze, stuck in observation mode. I wanted to understand what was happening before reacting. My heart beat faster every time my back hit something solid. He kept calling it connection, not out loud, but in the way he smiled when I couldn't move back any farther, in the way he tilted his head like this was mutual, like the lack of space was proof of something between us. We moved to the bar to get water. I positioned myself with open space behind me on purpose. He stepped into it, filling the gap. I took a bigger step back. My shoulders touched the bar edge. Cold metal pressed into my spine. He leaned in again, voice low, eyes locked on mine. I could smell his drink. People passed behind him. Laughter, noise, normal life. None of them noticed the way I was pinned without hands. I felt stupid for not just walking away. I felt dramatic for feeling cornered in a place full of people. I finally said I needed the bathroom and ducked out of the space. He didn't follow right away. I locked myself in a stall and sat there longer than necessary, scrolling my phone, grounding myself. When I came back out, he was waiting near the sink, leaning against the counter like he had always been there. We went back outside to get air. The rooftop had low walls and strings of lights. I stood near the railing when cooling my face. I felt better for a second. Then he stepped closer, placing himself between me and the open space. I shifted left. He shifted left. I shifted right. He followed. My back met the railing. Not a wall, but close enough. He smiled again, that same satisfied look. He said something about how we kept ending up like this, like it meant something. Like it was fate pulling us together instead of him steering every inch. My chest felt tight. I told him I was heading out. He looked surprised, then amused like I was teasing. He stepped closer again, one last adjustment. My back hit the corner where the railing met the wall. Nowhere left to move. That was the moment it clicked fully. This wasn't flirting. This wasn't awkward closeness. This was control done quietly enough to pass as charm. I felt my body go stiff, my brain yelling while my mouth stayed polite. I slipped out by pretending to answer my phone. I ducked under his arm and walked fast toward the stairs. He followed for a bit, then stopped, calling after me with that same tone like this was playful. I didn't look back. I went home shaking, replaying everything. I read our messages again, noticing how often he talked about reading body language, about knowing when people wanted something even if they didn't say it. It all looked different now. The next morning, I got a message from him. He said he had fun, said he felt strong chemistry, said he liked how close we kept getting. I didn't respond. I unmatched him and blocked the number he had somehow gotten. I tried to forget it, but my body didn't. For weeks after, any time someone stood too close, my back searched for exits. Walls felt louder. Corners felt dangerous. Nothing else happened. No stalking. No follow-ups. Just that night and the way it rewired how I move through space. How I measure distance. How I notice who fills it and who lets it stay open. Sometimes the scariest thing isn't what someone does to you. It's how carefully they make it look like you stepped there yourself. I noticed the looks before I noticed her. That's the weird part. I was already standing there feeling watched before I even knew who I was waiting for. The place was a converted warehouse turned food hall. All concrete floors and long wooden tables. The kind of spot where everyone pretends they discovered it first. I got there early because I hate walking into a room and scanning for someone. I leaned against a pillar and checked my phone, pretending to be busy. People kept glancing at me, not staring. Just quick looks, then down at their phones, then back up. I told myself it was nothing. Crowded place, lots of people, lots of screens. Still, it felt off, like I was standing under a light I didn't know was on. Then she showed up. She walked in like she already knew where she was going, phone in her hand, eyes scanning until they landed on me. She smiled and waved. Normal. Friendly. Nothing about her screamed trouble. She looked like her pictures. Casual clothes, hair tied back, comfortable in her body. I relaxed a little. We grabbed food and sat at one of the shared tables. The place was loud, full of overlapping conversations and clinking plates. I liked that. It felt safe. Public. Impossible for anything strange to really happen. She set her phone face up on the table, screen dark. Mine stayed in my pocket. Conversation started easy. Where we were from, what we did, dumb jokes about the place being overpriced. I noticed a guy at the next table glance over at us, then look down at his phone and nod slightly. Not at me, at her. It was subtle, but I saw it. A few minutes later, a group of girls walked past, slowed down. One of them looked at her phone, then at me, then back at the phone. She gave a small nod and kept walking. My chest tightened for a second. Then I laughed it off in my head. Coincidence. People look at phones constantly. As we talked, it kept happening. Different people. Different ages. A guy leaning against the bar. A couple near the window. They would glance at me, check their phones, then give her a look. Sometimes a nod. Sometimes a half smile. Sometimes nothing more than raised eyebrows. I asked her if she knew a lot of people here. She said she came sometimes. That's it. No explanation. She didn't look around when I mentioned it. Didn't seem surprised. Just took a sip of her drink and kept talking. I started feeling like I was on display. Like I had been put in the middle of something without being told the rules. My words felt louder. My movements felt clumsy. I wondered if I had something on my face. I checked my reflection in my phone screen. Nothing obvious. She asked questions that felt normal but landed weird now. How I felt about certain things. How I handled conflict. What I thought about trust. Every answer I gave felt like it echoed farther than it should have. Like it wasn't just for her. Every few minutes, her phone would light up. Not with a buzz or a sound. Just a soft glow. She would glance down, read something, then look back up at me with a different expression. Sometimes warmer. Sometimes neutral. Once colder. I started to notice the timing. I would answer a question. Pause. Then her phone would light up. Then someone nearby would look over. It was slow enough to doubt. Fast enough to feel intentional. I tried to test it. I said something slightly sarcastic about the place. Nothing rude. Just a comment. Her phone lit up almost immediately. A guy a few seats down glanced over, frowned slightly, then shook his head like he was disappointed. My stomach dropped. I didn't say anything about it. I didn't want to sound paranoid. Instead, I got quieter, more careful. She noticed. She asked if I was nervous. I said no. Her phone lit up again. This time, a woman near the bar looked over and smiled, then gave her a thumbs up. I felt heat crawl up my neck. My hands were sweaty. I wiped them on my jeans under the table. I suddenly became aware of how I was sitting, how wide my legs were, where my elbows rested. It felt like a test I didn't know I was taking. We moved to a different table when someone left. As we stood up, I noticed a guy pass by and deliberately slowed down. He looked at her phone as she held it, then looked at me and nodded once, sharp and final. Like a judge closing a file. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I asked her what was going on. Not accusing, just confused. She looked at me for a long second and smiled like she was deciding something. She said it was just friends, that they liked to help each other out, that dating could be unsafe and it was nice to have a backup. That didn't explain the looks, or the timing, or the way my chest felt like it was caving in. She didn't elaborate. She didn't have to. Her phone lit up again. This time she turned it slightly, just enough for me to catch a glimpse. It was a group chat. There was my name at the top, my first name. Next to it was a small icon, like a rating bar. Below that were messages stacked fast, short lines, abbreviations, reactions. Someone had sent a photo. I recognized my jacket, taken from behind. She locked the screen before I could see more. I sat there frozen. The noise of the place faded into a dull roar. I felt exposed in a way I had never felt before, like my insides were being discussed out loud while I sat there smiling. I asked how many people were in it. She said enough. She said they rotated shifts sometimes. She said it was for safety and accountability. She said it like it was obvious, like I should be grateful. I asked if I was doing okay. She checked her phone. Read. Then nodded slowly. She said so far. So far. I stood up too fast. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. Heads turned. I didn't care. I told her I was leaving. She didn't argue. She just watched me, phone in hand, thumb hovering. As I walked toward the exit, I felt eyes on me. More than before. People glanced at their phones, then at me. Some nodded, some frowned. One person laughed quietly. I pushed through the doors into the night air like I was breaking the surface of water. My phone buzzed as soon as I stepped outside. Unknown number. No greeting. Just a message that said score updated. I didn't reply. I walked until my legs burned. I didn't call a ride. I didn't look at my phone again until I was home with the door locked behind me. Later that night, curiosity got the better of me. I opened Tinder. Her profile was gone. Unmatched. Blocked. Wiped. Like it never existed. The next day, I noticed people looking at me differently in places I had never been before. A coffee shop across town, a bus stop, a grocery store. Phones out. Quick glances. Nods that felt too familiar. I deleted every dating app I had. Changed my photos. Changed my bio. It didn't matter. Once you are a name in a chat, you don't really leave it. I still wonder how many people watched me that night. How many opinions were formed before I even knew I was being measured. Sometimes I think about that rating bar next to my name, filling or emptying in real time while I talked about my job and my life like it was harmless. Nothing bad happened after that. No threats. No messages. Just the feeling that somewhere, in some group chat, a verdict was reached and archived. I didn't feel scared walking to meet him. That's what bothers me the most when I replay it. I wasn't nervous or shaky or on edge. I was tired in a normal way, the kind you get after staring at your phone too long deciding what to wear, and then choosing the same thing you always do. The night felt ordinary, which is how it slipped past all my internal alarms. Nothing announces itself as the thing you will think about for years. It just starts as another plan you almost cancel. We matched earlier that week late when I was half watching videos and half thinking about nothing. His profile was fine. Not amazing, not terrible. He looked clean, smiled in a way that felt practiced but not fake. His messages were quick and confident. Not overly nice, not pushy. I liked that he didn't ask too many questions right away. It felt easy. We picked a small bar tucked behind a bookstore, one of those places that's dim even during the day. Low ceiling, narrow room, a few mismatched tables. I chose it because I had been there before and because it was close to other places if I needed an excuse to leave. I told my friend where I was going. I always do. We have a system, a word we use when we want an out without having to explain. It started as a joke years ago and slowly turned into something serious. He was already inside when I arrived, sitting at the end of the bar. He stood up when he saw me, smiled wide. It was a little too wide, but I told myself I was reading into it. First impressions always feel exaggerated. We sat at a small table near the wall. My back was to the room. I noticed that right away and almost switched seats, but he was already sitting and I didn't want to make it awkward. Conversation flowed. Work, hobbies, complaints about traffic. He talked a lot about himself, but paused just enough to ask me things too. I answered carefully, not giving too much. He laughed easily, leaned forward when I spoke. His eyes stayed on me in a way that felt intense but flattering at first. I ordered a drink. He did too. I sipped slowly. He didn't. As the night went on, I felt that small shift. Nothing dramatic. Just a sense that he was watching my reactions more than my words. When I smiled, he smiled bigger. When I leaned back, he leaned forward. When I crossed my arms, he uncrossed his and placed them on the table, palms open like a demonstration. He asked about my friends. I mentioned one by name. He repeated it later like he was filing it away. I noticed but didn't say anything. People remember names. That's normal. Then he asked about my live situation. I gave a vague answer. He nodded slowly like that was enough. The way he said okay made my stomach tighten for a second. Not because of the word, but because of the tone. Satisfied. I checked my phone under the table. No new messages. I typed a quick one to my friend. Nothing suspicious, just to check in. She replied with a joke. I relaxed a little. He suggested another drink. I declined. He didn't push, just smiled and said more for him. The smile lingered a beat too long. The bar grew louder as more people came in. The table felt smaller. I shifted my chair slightly. He adjusted his to match. I shifted again. Same result. My back brushed the wall. I took a breath and told myself to stay calm. I didn't want to overreact. He asked if I was enjoying myself. I said yes because it felt easier than explaining the weird knot in my chest. He nodded like that confirmed something. I excused myself to the bathroom just to get space. The mirror showed me a face that looked normal. Not scared, just alert. I took my phone out and typed the word. One word. Our word. The one that means call me. The one that means I need an exit now. I hit send and felt a strange mix of relief and guilt, like I was being dramatic, like I was wasting it. I washed my hands slowly, gave her time to respond, then went back to the table. He was watching me when I sat down, not staring, but aware. His eyes flicked to my phone and back to my face. He smiled again, softer this time, knowing. My phone buzzed, my friend responding right on time. I glanced at the screen, heart beating faster. I didn't even have to open it. I knew what it said. Before I could react, before I could pick up the phone or pretend to read it, he leaned back slightly and said I didn't need to fake an emergency. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't sound angry. He sounded amused, like he was letting me in on a joke we both understood. Everything inside me went cold. I didn't ask how he knew. I didn't challenge him. My brain locked up, running through possibilities too fast to grab any of them. Had he seen my screen? Had he guessed? Had he heard something earlier? None of it mattered in that moment. What mattered was that he knew, and that he was comfortable letting me know he knew. He kept smiling, watching my face carefully. I felt exposed in a way I had never felt before, like my backup plan had just been taken apart in front of me piece by piece. I picked up my phone anyway, pretending to read the message. My hands were steady somehow. I told him my friend needed me. I said it calmly. He nodded like he expected it, like this was the next step in something already planned. He didn't argue, didn't ask me to stay, didn't get upset. That was worse than if he had. He stood up with me, grabbed his jacket, said he would walk me out. I said no. He tilted his head, considering, then shrugged. We walked toward the door together anyway. The space between us felt loaded. I could feel him watching my reflection in the glass as we passed. Outside, the street was quiet, damp from earlier rain. My friend was supposed to call any second. He stopped just outside the bar, blocking the doorway without touching me. He told me he understood safety routines, said he respected them, said most people aren't as subtle as they think. My phone rang. I answered immediately. I didn't even listen to what my friend said. I just started walking, talking, putting distance between us as fast as I could without running. He didn't follow. He stayed where he was watching. The bar door closed behind him. The light from inside framed his silhouette for a second before it swung shut. I walked 3 blocks before I stopped shaking. My friend stayed on the phone with me until I got home. I locked the door, checked the windows, sat in my bed fully dressed. I kept replaying his smile, the way he said it like reassurance instead of a threat. Later that night, I unmatched him. His profile disappeared instantly like it had never been there. No messages, no follow-up, just gone. Nothing happened after that. No calls, no showing up, no messages from unknown numbers, just silence. But the word doesn't feel safe anymore. The system doesn't feel solid. Every time I type it now, my chest tightens. Every time my phone buzzes on a date, I wonder who was watching my face when I read it. Some people don't stop you from leaving. They just make sure you know they saw you try. I woke up to my phone buzzing like it was angry at me. Not a normal buzz. Not a single notification. It was the kind where the screen keeps lighting up over and over, heat building in your palm, your brain already tight before you even look. I remember thinking something bad had happened to someone else. That instinct where you assume disaster belongs to another person first. I didn't know yet that it was already mine. The first thing I saw was the message. It was my own face. Not a selfie, not a photo I took. It was a paused video, my mouth half open, eyebrows pulled together, jaw tense. I didn't recognize the moment at first. I was sitting upright in bed, heart racing, staring at myself like I was a stranger who happened to look exactly like me. Above the video was a caption I didn't write, words twisted just enough to make my stomach drop. I didn't hit play right away. I scrolled, more clips, different angles, different cuts, same night. I met her the night before. That part had already started blurring by morning, but I remembered enough. We matched on Tinder midweek, nothing intense, just casual back and forth. She suggested a walk along the lit trail by the old train bridge, said she liked being outside more than bars. I liked that. It felt low pressure. The place was public but quiet. Joggers passing, bikes clicking by, river moving slow beside us. She walked with her phone in her hand the whole time, screen dark, thumb resting to the side like she was ready to use it. I noticed but didn't care. People are glued to their phones now. It didn't feel strange then. We talked about dumb stuff. Work annoyances. Bad dates. How weird apps feel after a while. I joked about needing a break from it all. She laughed at the right times, nodded, asked questions that kept things moving. It felt fine. Not amazing, not bad. Just fine. At one point, a group passed us and one of them bumped into me. I reacted without thinking, stepping back fast, hands up, laughing it off. She asked if I was okay. I said yeah. People should watch where they're going. Nothing heated, nothing loud. That moment was the first clip. In the video, there was no context. No laughter, no passing groove. Just my face, cropped tight, my voice raised slightly as I said people should watch where they're going. The caption framed it like an outburst, but I was snapping at her. I kept scrolling. Another clip showed me later, sitting on a bench, hands moving as I talked about work stress. I remembered that part clearly. I had been explaining a situation with a manager who kept changing schedules last minute. I wasn't angry at her. I was venting the way people do. In the clip, the beginning was gone. The end was gone. It was just my voice mid-sentence, volume up, brows furrowed, hands cutting the air. The caption said red flag energy. My throat felt tight. I tried to breathe slowly, telling myself this had to be fake, edited, taken out of order. But the face was mine. The voice was mine. The jacket I was wearing was mine. The background matched the trail lights exactly. Comments were already piling up. People I didn't know were tearing into me, calling me unstable, dangerous, saying they felt sorry for the girl. Some were tagging accounts that reposted stuff like this. Some were guessing my name. One person found my profile photo from Tinder and posted it next to the clip. Uncensored. I threw my phone on the bed and stood up, pacing like that would fix something. My chest hurt. My ears rang. I picked the phone back up and searched my name. Nothing yet, but the video was spreading fast. I could see the view count climbing. I finally hit play on the first clip with sound on. My voice sounded harsher than I remembered. Not because it was actually harsh, but because there was nothing around it to soften it. No context. No tone shifts. Just a loop of me sounding annoyed. I watched all the clips. There were 5, each one carefully trimmed. Each one showing a different version of me that technically existed for a few seconds, but never like this. Never alone. Never stacked together. The worst part was realizing how she got them. Every angle matched where she stood when we talked. The height, the framing. She wasn't holding the phone up. It had been angled low, probably recording the whole time. She hadn't been snapping quick videos. She had been collecting material. I scrolled back to my messages with her. Still there. Still normal. Nothing hinting at this. No threats. No arguments. Nothing that would justify posting something like this. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't reactive. It felt planned. By noon, someone had found my workplace, tagged it in a comment asking if they knew they employed someone like this. My stomach dropped so hard I had to sit down. I emailed my manager before they could find out another way, trying to explain without sounding defensive. I didn't know how to explain something that looked so bad on its own. The videos kept spraying. They were being reposted with different captions, each one more dramatic than the last. Some added music. Some slowed the clips down. Some zoomed in on my face when my jaw tightened, looping it like a warning sign. I tried reporting them. Some got taken down. Others stayed up. Accounts mirrored them faster than I could keep up. Every refresh brought new comments, new assumptions, new versions of me I didn't recognize. People were debating my personality like I wasn't real, like I was a character someone invented for content. They talked about how they could tell I had issues, how they had dated guys like me, how the girl must have been terrified. I kept thinking about her walk, calm, relaxed, the way she had asked questions that nudged me into talking more, the way she had stayed quiet when I spoke, letting me fill the space, the way she positioned herself slightly behind me when we walked, just enough to keep the camera steady. I remembered one moment near the end when she had smiled at her phone and said nothing. I thought she got a message. I didn't ask. By evening, my phone was useless. Too many notifications. Too many messages from people I barely knew asking what was going on. Some believed me. Some did. Most just wanted details. I posted a response once. Short, calm, explaining that the clips were edited and taken out of context. It didn't help. People said that was exactly what someone like me would say. I deleted the post. The next day, a longer compilation went up. This one had text overlays analyzing my body language. Arrows pointing to my hands. Slow motion zooms on my face. Someone had added captions explaining what each gesture supposedly meant. Dominance, aggression, lack of control. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the date in my head, looking for the moment where I could have stopped it. Left earlier, said less, noticed more. I unmatched her on Tinder, but her profile was already gone. No username to report. No way to reach out. Just empty space where a person had been. A week later, the clip slowed down. New content replaced me. The internet moved on like it always does. But the damage didn't rewind. People who saw it remembered. Employers Googled. Dates searched my name. I still see my face sometimes when I don't expect it. Someone reposting an old clip. Someone using it as an example, a reminder. The scariest part isn't that she filmed me. It's how easily a normal conversation became a weapon once it was cut right. How fast a person can turn into a warning sign when context gets stripped away. I didn't do anything illegal. I didn't threaten anyone. I didn't hurt anyone. But there is a version of me online that looks like he could. And I can't take him back. I didn't go into that night expecting to stay long. I remember tying my shoes and already planning my exit, the mental clock set to an hour max. That was my rule with Tinder dates I wasn't sure about. One drink, one loop around the conversation, then gone. It made me feel in control. The funny part is I even told myself that out loud while looking in the mirror, like saying it would lock it in. I had no idea how fast that control could be peeled away without anyone touching me. We met at a small wine place squeezed between a nail salon and a closed pet store. The lights inside were low and warm, the kind that makes everything feel slower than it is. I chose it because it was quiet and because the tables were small, easy to slide out of. He was already there when I walked in, sitting near the wall, phone face down, hands folded like he was waiting for an interview. He looked normal. That's the problem with most of these stories. Nothing looked wrong at the start. His smile was easy. His posture relaxed. He stood when I got there, pulled my chair out without making a show of it. I noticed small things like how he watched my face when I spoke instead of looking around. I told myself that was a good sign. Conversation was fine. Not exciting, not uncomfortable. Just fine. He talked about work, about moving around a lot when he was younger. I talked about school and how I hated early mornings. He laughed at the right moments. Nodded when he was supposed to. Nothing felt off enough to justify leaving early. About 40 minutes in, I checked the time on my phone and felt that familiar itch to wrap it up. I started shifting in my chair, the way I always do when I'm getting ready to stand. I mentioned that I should probably head out soon. That's when he did it the first time. He leaned forward slightly and brought up my dad. Not in a general way, not a vague comment. He mentioned the exact thing, the thing I never talk about. The accident, the year, the detail that still makes my chest tighten when it comes up unexpectedly. I froze, my brain stalled out, trying to figure out how he could possibly know that. I sat back down without realizing I was doing it. I told myself it was coincidence. Maybe I mentioned it and forgot. Maybe it came up in messages, but I knew it did. I am careful with that part of my life. It stays locked away. I did not put it on profiles. I did not bring it up on first dates. Ever. He didn't linger on it. That's what made it worse. He mentioned it gently, like he was checking in, then moved on to another topic like nothing happened. My heart was racing, but my body stayed still. I didn't want to draw attention to it. I didn't want to ask how he knew. Another 10 minutes passed. I tried again, said I had an early morning, pushed my chair back an inch. This time he mentioned my old apartment. Not just the street, but the floor. The weird neighbor with the loud tea. The thing I complained about once in a private message to a friend years ago. Not online. Not public. I felt my stomach drop so hard it made me dizzy. I sat back down again. I finally asked how he knew these things. My voice sounded calm, but my hands were cold. He smiled and said he just listened well. Said people share more than they think. Then he tilted his head like that settled it. It did. I started scanning my memory like a search bar. Social media, old posts, tagged photos, nothing added up. These weren't things you could find with casual scrolling. They were even things I talked about with most people who knew me well. I shifted again, this time more deliberately, picking up my bag and standing halfway. My legs felt stiff, like they didn't trust the movement. He didn't reach for me, didn't block me, didn't even raise his voice. He just mentioned my friend who moved away last year. The one who stopped talking to me suddenly. The one I still think about sometimes when I can't sleep. He mentioned the reason. The thing I blamed myself for. My knees felt weak. I sat back down hard enough that the chair scraped. My brain was screaming at me to leave. My body wouldn't cooperate. It felt like every time I tried to stand, he found a thread inside me and pulled it tight, just enough to keep me there. I started answering in shorter sentences, stopped smiling, stopped asking questions. I kept my eyes on the table, hoping that would somehow break the spell. He watched me carefully, like he was monitoring my breathing. Each time I moved, he adjusted his words. Always something personal. Always something true. Never accusing. Never threatening. Just facts from my life laid out casually between sips of his drink. It felt like being reminded who I was piece by piece, but by someone who shouldn't have had the pieces. I wondered if he'd had known all of this before we even met, if the date was just a container for something else. If the goal was never to get to know me, but to see how long he could keep me sitting. Eventually, the server came by and asked if we wanted another round. I shook my head too quickly. He smiled and said no for both of us. That should have been my moment. A clean break, but my legs still wouldn't move. I finally forced myself up, heart pounding, bag clutched tight. He looked up at me calmly and mentioned one last thing. The thing I had only ever written in a notebook I kept under my bed. The fear I'd never said out loud. The sentence I crossed out and rewrote 100 times. That was when the panic hit full force. I don't remember sitting back down that time, but I must have, because suddenly I was there again, staring at the table, breath shallow. My head felt light. My ears rang. He stopped talking then, like he'd gone far enough. We sat in silence for a few seconds that felt stretched thin. Then he leaned back and said he didn't mean to make me uncomfortable. Said he just felt a strong connection. Said sometimes people stay when they feel seen. Seen, that's the word that still makes my skin crawl. I stood up again, slower this time, deliberately. I didn't announce it. I didn't explain. I just moved. My legs shook, but they held. He didn't stop me that time. He didn't say anything else personal. He just watched me walk toward the door, eyes steady, expression unreadable. Outside, the air felt sharp and clean like I had been underwater too long. I walked fast, then faster, then broke into a run halfway down the block. I didn't stop until my chest burned. I went home and locked the door, checked my windows, sat on the floor with my back against the couch, trying to understand what had happened. I went through my phone, my accounts, my settings. Nothing obvious. No breaches. No messages I didn't recognize. The next day, I unmatched him. His profile disappeared instantly. No trace, like he had never been there at all. Nothing else happened after that. No messages, no following, no escalation. Just the memory of sitting there, held in place by things I thought were mine alone. Sometimes I think about how easy it was, how he never touched me, never raised his voice, never blocked my path. He just knew when to speak and what to say to keep me right where he wanted. I found out in the least dramatic way possible, which somehow made it worse. No warning, no build-up, no late-night doom scrolling. It was a normal morning, phone in one hand, cereal in the other, half awake and already annoyed at nothing. I was clearing notifications when an email caught my eye. The subject line sounded generic and smug at the same time, like something trying to sound important without saying anything. I almost deleted it, but the preview line mentioned dating psychology and real examples. Curiosity beat common sense by a mile. I didn't even remember signing up for anything like that. Maybe I clicked something once, maybe a friend forwarded it ages ago. Either way, the email was locked behind a paywall. Summary at the top, blurred text below, the usual tease. I scrolled, annoyed, then froze when I saw a sentence in the preview that felt familiar in a way I couldn't place yet. It wasn't just similar, it was exact. The phrasing, the weird way I structure sentences when I'm explaining something personal. The pause words I always use when I'm trying to sound casual about something that isn't casual at all. It was me. My brain rejected it at first, like it was seeing a reflection move half a second too late. I clicked through without thinking and paid the $12. I didn't even hesitate. My hands were already shaking by the time the page loaded. The article was laid out clean and confident. Bold headers, tidy paragraphs, charts, and bullet points. It framed everything like research, like science, like this was helpful and neutral. It described a recent dating interaction used as an anonymized case study. No names, no locations, just a subject labeled male responder. I started reading and felt that slow, sinking drop in my stomach. It was our date. Not the whole thing, not the context. Just selected moments, trimmed down and rearranged. My responses quoted word for word, introduced as examples of volatility, defensiveness, emotional inconsistency. Every sentence was one I remembered saying. Every example was stripped of why I said it. The place matched too. The little cafe with the mismatched chairs and the broken heater, the time of day, the topics, even the order of questions. She'd asked about work stress. I answered honestly. That answer was now presented as an early indicator of unresolved anger. She asked about past relationships. I answered carefully. That was now framed as avoidance. I scrolled faster, heart pounding. There was a section analyzing tone shifts. Another about body language cues described as if observed directly. I remembered her phone on the table, face down but always close. I remembered thinking nothing of it. My responses were indented and highlighted, each one followed by commentary explaining what it supposedly revealed. Not what I meant, not what was happening, just what a reader was meant to conclude. I stopped eating. The cereal went soggy and untouched. Halfway through, I hit the part that made my hands go cold. A paragraph about escalation risk. It quoted a line I said near the end of the date, something offhand about being tired of people misunderstanding me. I remembered the exact moment. I had laughed after saying it. She had nodded. In the article, the laugh was gone. The line stood alone, heavy and ominous. Below it was a graph. I felt sick. I searched the page for anything that could link it back to her. There was nothing. Just a byline with a name that sounded professional and vague. A short bio about consulting work and subscriber growth. A comment section locked to paying members. I finished reading even though every part of me wanted to stop. The conclusion summarized the subject as high risk for emotional unpredictability. It suggested strategies for disengagement. It suggested warning signs others should watch for. I closed the page and stared at the wall. My reflection in the dark screen looked wrong, like I was seeing myself through someone else's opinion. The date itself had felt fine. Not great, not terrible. Just another attempt. She had been calm, observant, asked thoughtful questions. Nothing had felt like an interview. Nothing had felt recorded. I went back through my messages with her. Still there. Still normal. No sign she was collecting anything. No arguments. No bad ending. She had even sent a polite follow-up saying she enjoyed meeting me but didn't feel a spark. I had thanked her and wished her well. That was it. Except it wasn't. I searched the newsletter name on social media. It had a decent following. People shared screenshots, discussed insights, debated patterns. Some posts referenced recent case studies. One mentioned a male responder example that sounded suspiciously like me without saying me. I felt exposed in a way I couldn't explain. Not because my name was attached, but because my words were. Because somewhere out there people were reading my thoughts filtered through someone else's agenda and calling it science. I tried to convince myself it didn't matter. It was anonymous. No one knew it was me, but that logic didn't hold when I thought about how easily context disappears online, how fast things get screenshotted and reposted and reshaped. I emailed the contact address listed at the bottom, kept it calm, explained that I recognized my own words and had not consented to them being used, asked for removal. I didn't get a reply. 2 days later, a follow-up issue dropped. Same format, different topic, but a footnote referenced the previous case study again, my words again, reused to support a different point, this time about inconsistency over time. I felt something crack then, not panic, not anger, just a dull sense of being used. I started wondering how many other people were in there, how many dates had been quietly turned into content, how many conversations people thought were private were being repackaged and sold as insight. I read the terms on the website, buried language about anonymized real-world interactions, consent implied through participation in modern dating ecosystems. It was vague enough to mean nothing and everything at the same time. I thought about the way she had listened, how she never interrupted, how she let silence stretch just long enough for me to fill it, how she nodded without reacting, like she was letting me finish a data point. I wondered if she had been taking notes, if she had a system, if I was just entry number whatever. I considered responding publicly, writing my own version, explaining the context. But I knew how that would look, defensive, proving the point they already decided I represented. So I did nothing. Weeks passed. The newsletter kept coming. I haven't subscribed. The emails stopped, but the thought didn't. Every time I talked to someone new, I felt myself editing in real time, softening words, cutting thoughts short, wondering how they would look pulled out of place and labeled by a stranger. I still use dating apps, but differently. Less, more guarded. I notice phones now. I notice pauses. I notice when someone seems more interested in my answers than in me. Nothing else happened. No doxing. No fallout. No one confronted me. The damage stayed quiet and internal. Somewhere out there, my voice exists as a case study, frozen and framed in a way I never agreed to, and I have no way of correcting it. The first sign was online. It was the way the server looked at me like I had already done something wrong. I remember standing there with my jacket half off, smiling too hard, trying to read the room, and feeling this weird pushback in the air. Not obvious, not dramatic, just a subtle drop in warmth that made my stomach tighten before my brain could explain why. I had met him through Tinder earlier that week. Nothing special about his profile, which is probably why I said yes. Normal pictures, normal jokes, nothing intense. He suggested a newer restaurant downtown, one of those places that pops up overnight and fills with plants and exposed brick. I agreed because I wanted somewhere public and busy, safe by default. I got there a few minutes early. The host stand was empty, so I waited near the entrance scrolling my phone. When the host finally came over, she barely looked at me. Her smile was thin, professional in the way that means not really there. She asked if I was meeting someone. I said yes. She nodded like she already knew and pointed me toward a table near the back. That should have been my first real warning. He arrived right on time, hugged me lightly like we had practiced it. He looked relaxed, comfortable, like this was his place. When he sat down, he smiled at the server walking past, and she smiled back instantly. Wide, friendly, not the same one she gave me. I told myself I was imagining it. Some people just have friendly faces. Some people just click better with staff. I didn't want to start the night feeling defensive over nothing. We ordered drinks. The server barely acknowledged me when I spoke, but leaned in slightly when he did. She wrote down his word carefully, repeated it back, nodded. When I spoke, she just scribbled and walked away. I laughed it off in my head, told myself I sounded quiet. Conversation at the table felt fine. Not great, not bad. He asked questions. I answered. I asked some back. He answered, but didn't elaborate much. He kept checking his phone in small ways, screen angled down, thumb moving fast. I noticed but didn't think much of it. People text during dates all the time. When the drinks came, his was placed gently in front of him. Mine was set down a little too hard, sloshing slightly. The server didn't apologize. She didn't even look at me. I felt my cheeks heat up. I wondered if I had done something without realizing it. I took a sip and tried to relax. Maybe I was just in my head. As the night went on, the pattern didn't stop. Every time a server passed our table, they acknowledged him first, sometimes only him. Eye contact, smiles, jokes, with me nothing, no smiles, no checking in. Once, when I tried to flag someone down for water, they looked past me like I was invisible. I asked him quietly if he knew people here. He said no, not really. Shrugged like it didn't matter. Then his phone buzzed and he checked it again, longer this time. When he looked back up, his expression had shifted. Not concern, more like mild interest. I felt uncomfortable in a way I couldn't place. Not unsafe exactly, just misaligned. Like the room had decided something about me without asking. I excused myself to the bathroom just to breathe. The mirror showed my face flushed, eyes a little wide. I didn't look unstable. I looked like someone on a first date who couldn't read the vibe. I splashed water on my wrists and went back out. When I sat down, he asked if everything was okay. I said yes. He nodded slowly like he was checking a box. Dinner came. My order was wrong. His was perfect. When I pointed out the mistake, the server sighed quietly and fixed it without me in my eyes. I apologized even though it wasn't my fault. She didn't respond. I started feeling smaller in my chair. My words got shorter. My movements more careful. I didn't want to give anyone a reason to confirm whatever idea they already had. Halfway through the meal, I noticed a table nearby glance over at me, then at him, then back at their phones. One of them smirked. I looked down at my plate, heart beating faster. He suggested dessert. I said maybe. He smiled like that was enough of a yes. The server came back and addressed him directly again, asking what he wanted. He ordered for both of us without asking me first. I didn't correct him. I just nodded. The dessert came quickly, too quickly, like it had already been decided. I checked the time on my phone and realized I wanted to leave. Badly. I told him I had an early morning. He said sure, no problem, but didn't make a move to stand. Instead, he picked up his phone again and typed something. When he looked up, he seemed amused. I stood anyway, gathered my bag. He followed more slowly like he was rushed. When we got to the front, the host smiled brightly at him and thanked him for coming in. She didn't look at me at all. Outside, the night air felt colder than it should have. We did a quick goodbye. Nothing awkward. Nothing dramatic. He said he would text me. I nodded and walked away without looking back. The moment I got home, my phone buzzed. Not from him. From a friend who had sent me a screenshot. It was a post from a local dating group. One of those private ones people join to warn each other about bad dates. I had heard about them. I had never thought I would be in one. The post was about me. No name, just a description. The restaurant. The outfit I was wearing. My hair. My mannerisms. It described me as unstable. Difficult. Emotionally unpredictable. It said I made staff uncomfortable. It said I was rude and intense. The timestamp made my blood run cold. It was posted while I was still sitting at the table. There were comments already. People chiming in. Some agreeing. Some adding details that didn't even happen. Someone said they recognized me. Someone else said they had seen me around and got bad vibes. I sat on my bed staring at the screen, heart pounding so hard it hurt. I scrolled through more posts and found another comment thread. This one had a blurry photo taken from behind. My jacket, my hair. Taken inside the restaurant. I felt sick. I went back through the night in my head, every moment replaying with new weight. The cold looks, the wrong order, the size, the way the staff acted like I was already a problem. They had seen the post. They had been told something about me before I even knew it existed. I checked the group rules. No identifying information allowed. Anonymous posting encouraged. No way to defend yourself without exposing your name. It was designed that way. I messaged the mods anyway. Explained that the post was about me and was false. They responded hours later saying they couldn't verify identities and that the group was for safety. They suggested I reflect on the feedback. I unmatched him immediately. His profile was gone already. The next day, another post appeared. Vague, referencing a follow-up. saying the situation escalated. Nothing specific, just enough to reinforce the idea. I didn't go out for a while after that. I kept wondering how many places had seen it, how many servers, how many strangers, how many rooms I would walk into already judged. Nothing else happened. No confrontation, no messages. Just the quiet understanding that somewhere a version of me exists that I can't correct, that walks into places before I do and sets the tone without my consent. Sometimes I think about that first look from the server, how she knew something I did, how the night was already written and I was just acting it out. I didn't even want to go out that night. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed, shoes on, phone in my hand, staring at the wall like it might tell me to stay home. Nothing felt wrong, but nothing felt right either. I had that heavy bored feeling where everything feels like effort, even things you already agreed to. If she had canceled, I would have felt relieved she didn't. We matched a few days earlier. Nothing intense. Just light back and forth. Jokes that didn't try too hard. She seemed chill in messages, almost quiet. I liked that. She suggested a night market near the river, food stalls, string lights, lots of people. I agreed because public felt safe and casual. No pressure. No expectations. I got there first and wandered around, hands in my pockets, looking at menus I was going to order from. The place was loud in a soft way, music drifting from speakers, people talking over each other, the smell of fried food everywhere. I felt anonymous in a good way, like I could disappear into the crowd if I needed to. She found me near a drink stand. Smiled, waved, walked up like she knew exactly where I would be. She looked like her pictures, relaxed, confident. She hugged me quickly, then stepped back into her own space. It felt normal. We walked around together, grabbed snacks, talked about random stuff. School, work, how busy the place was. Nothing deep, nothing flirty. I remember thinking it felt more like hanging out than a date. I was comfortable, maybe too comfortable. We stopped near a railing overlooking the water. People leaned against it, taking photos, laughing, scrolling. I rested my elbows on the rail, leaving space between us. She leaned too, but closer. Our shoulders almost touched. I shifted a little, getting more room. She didn't follow or push. She just stayed where she was. For a while, everything felt fine. Then something shifted. Not in her exactly, in the air around us. I noticed people looking over more, not staring, just glancing, phones coming out. At first, I thought it was because of the lights or the view. People film everything now. I didn't think much of it. She started asking more pointed questions. Not aggressive, just specific, how I usually act on dates, what my boundaries were, if I ever made people uncomfortable without meaning to. I answered honestly, a little confused but not defensive. I thought maybe she had bad past dates and was cautious. We moved toward a quieter path away from the stalls, still public but less packed. I suggested heading back toward the lights because it felt better there. She nodded but walked slower, like she wanted to finish the thought she was on. That's when it happened. Out of nowhere, her voice got louder. Not yelling exactly, but raised enough to cut through the background noise. The tone changed completely. Sharp. Accusing. She started saying that I had been crossing boundaries. That I was standing too close. That I wasn't listening when she tried to create space. That she felt uncomfortable. My brain stalled. I froze in place, hands open at my sides, trying to understand what she was talking about. I replayed the last 10 minutes in my head like a broken clip. I had stepped away. I had given space. I had suggested moving back to the crowd. Before I could even react, I noticed the phones. People nearby had turned toward us. A few had already lifted their phones, screens glowing, cameras pointed. I saw one person step closer for a better angle. Another whispered something to their friend while holding their phone chest high, recording. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it. She kept going, her voice steady but loud, listing things that didn't line up with my memory. She was hysterical. That was the scariest part. She sounded controlled, practiced, like she knew exactly how to pitch it so people would listen. I tried to speak, but my mouth felt dry. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't step toward her. I said her name, tried to calm the situation, tried to explain that I was confused and that I didn't want her to feel uncomfortable. Every word felt like it sank into the noise and disappeared. People were watching now, fully watching. Someone behind me said something under their breath. Someone else shook their head. I saw a guy adjust his phone to keep both of us in frame. I felt my face heat up, not with anger, but panic. This wasn't a private misunderstanding anymore. This was a performance, and I was already cast as the problem. She took a step back, still speaking loudly, creating distance like it was proof. She looked around briefly, making eye contact with people recording like she was checking the room. Then she looked back at me, eyes sharp, measuring my reaction. I realized then that anything I did could make it worse. If I defended myself too strongly, I would look aggressive. If I stayed quiet, I would look guilty. If I walked away, it would look like I was running. I felt trapped in the middle of a crowd that had already decided something was happening. I put my hands up slightly, not dramatic, just visible. I said I was sorry she felt that way. I said I didn't want to make her uncomfortable. I said I would leave. My voice sounded thin to my own ears. She stopped talking the moment I said I would leave. That silence was loud. People kept recording anyway. I turned and walked away slowly, not pushing past anyone, not looking back. My legs felt like they were at mine. I could feel eyes burning into my back. Phones tracking me as I moved. Someone laughed nervously. Someone else muttered something I couldn't hear. I didn't stop walking until I was back in the brightest part of the market, then through it, then out onto the street. I stood there shaking, trying to breathe, hands clenched into fists inside my sleeves. My phone buzzed. Notifications were already coming in. Someone had posted a clip. Short, cropped, just her voice raised and me standing there looking stunned. No context. No before or after. The caption framed it like a warning. Comments were already forming opinions faster than facts. I sat on a curb and scrolled with numb fingers. More clips. Different angles. Different phones. All starting at the same moment. None showing the calm walk. None showing the space I gave. None showing the confusion on my face when it began. I went home in a daze, locked my door, sat on the floor with my back against it, phone buzzing nonstop, friends texting asking if it was me, strangers messaging insults. Someone found my profile and shared it. Someone else commented that they always got bad vibes from guys like me. By morning, the clips had spread beyond the local page, stitched together, slowed down. Captions added analyzing my posture, my hands, my facial expression. People explaining what my silence meant. People explaining what my apology meant. None of them asking what actually happened. I tried to report the videos. Some stayed up. Some disappeared and reappeared under different accounts. It didn't matter. The idea was already out there. I unmatched her. Her profile was gone already. I thought about reaching out to defend myself publicly, but every draft sounded wrong. Defensive. Desperate. Confirming the image they already had, so I said nothing. The worst part was the accusations. It was how fast the crowd formed. How quickly phones came up. How easily a moment turned into evidence before I even understood what I was being accused of. Nothing legal happened. No police. No follow-up. The internet moved on after a few days, chasing the next thing. But my name stuck in small corners. Whispers. Screenshots saved by people who never met me. I still think about that switch in her voice. How fast it flipped the room. How prepared she seemed for the attention. How closely she watched the crowd instead of me. I don't know if it was planned or impulsive. I don't know if she believed what she said or just knew how it would land. All I know is that one raised voice in the right place turned me into a clip before I could react. The moment that stuck with me didn't happen when I met him, or even when I realized I wanted to leave. It happened later, after, when my brain kept replaying a single small motion over and over. A nod, not dramatic, not aggressive. Just a simple nod of the head that told me exactly how alone I was in that room. I didn't know it yet at the time, but that nod would end up louder than anything else that night. I matched with him on Tinder on a boring Sunday evening, the kind where time feels thick and endless. His profile was normal. Too normal to be memorable. Decent photos, short bio, nothing clever. Our messages were fine. Not exciting, not uncomfortable. He asked where I liked to go for drinks, and I named a bar I had been to a bunch of times before. Small place, friendly staff, always crowded enough to feel safe. I suggested it without thinking twice. When I walked in, the bar smelled like citrus cleaner and spilled beer. Lights were low, music steady but not loud. I recognized the bartender right away. I had seen him there before, joked with him once or twice. Nothing personal but familiar enough to feel reassuring. I ordered a drink while I waited, leaning against the bar, scrolling my phone. He arrived about 5 minutes later. Smiled, hugged me lightly, stood a little too close, but I told myself it was just loud in there. We grabbed stools at the bar because the tables were full. He sat on my right, boxing me in slightly between him and the counter. I noticed but didn't say anything. I didn't want to be that person who complains about space right away. Conversation started normal. Work, hobbies, complaining about the city. He talked a lot, interrupted more than I liked, but again, not enough to justify leaving immediately. I nodded along, sipped my drink slowly. He ordered another round without asking me first and pushed it toward me when it came. I said I was good with what I had. He laughed it off. As the night went on, he leaned closer every time he talked. Not touching me, just closing space. I shifted my stool back an inch. He followed. I crossed my arms. He leaned in more. My shoulders tightened. I kept scanning the room, reminding myself I wasn't alone. People everywhere. Bartender right there. He started asking more personal questions. Not curious ones. Pointed ones. About past relationships, about why they ended, about what I put up with. I gave vague answers. He smiled like that told him enough. I checked the time on my phone and said I should probably head out soon. He frowned slightly, then brushed it off, saying the night was still early. He ordered himself another drink. I didn't touch mine anymore. At some point, I realized my body felt tight, jaw clenched, shoulders up near my ears. I tried to relax, tried to breathe slower, but the feeling didn't go away. He kept leaning in and voice low, making comments that felt just off enough to bother me, but not enough to call out without sounding dramatic. I told myself to go to the bathroom and reset. I slid off the stool and moved away from him. He watched me go, eyes following, then turned back to his drink like nothing happened. In the bathroom, I stared at my reflection and tried to ground myself. I didn't look scared. I looked irritated, uncomfortable. I told myself I was allowed to leave. I didn't owe him anything. I washed my hands longer than necessary just to give myself time. When I came back out, he had moved my stool slightly closer to his. I didn't comment. I just stood there for a second, then sat because it felt easier than making a scene. That's when I knew I needed help. Not because I thought he would hurt me, but because I felt stuck. Like every polite exit, I tried slid right past him. Like he was hearing my words, only my presence. I waited until he turned to look at the tea behind the bar and leaned toward the bartender. I kept my voice low. I didn't make eye contact with him. I asked if I could close out my tab and if he'd help me get out of there. The bartender barely reacted. No concern. No questions. He looked at me, then past me, then nodded toward him. He told me to work it out. The words didn't even hit as hard as the gesture. That nod, the way his chin tipped in his direction, like this was between us and not his problem. Like I was overreacting. Like I had misread the situation. My chest went hollow. I nodded back automatically like my body was on autopilot and stepped away from the bar. I felt embarrassed. Stupid, like I had just failed some invisible test of being easygoing enough. He turned back toward me, smiling, clearly unaware of what had just happened, or maybe fully aware. It's hard to know which is worse. He asked if everything was okay. I said yes because the bartender was watching and I didn't trust the room anymore. I finished my drink too fast. My hands were shaking. He noticed and laughed, saying I should slow down. I didn't respond. I tried again to say I was leaving. He sighed dramatically, then said fine, but suggested we step outside first to talk. I didn't want to argue. I wanted out. I stood up and walked toward the door, hoping the movement itself would break whatever hold he had on the situation. Outside, the air was cool and sharp. Streetlights buzzed. Cars passed. It felt better just not being inside anymore. He followed me out and stood close again, blocking the doorway back in. He told me he didn't mean to make me uncomfortable. He told me I was misreading things. He told me people these days get nervous too easily. His tone was calm, reasonable, like he was explaining something obvious. I felt small, not physically, but emotionally, like my instincts had been dismissed by everyone in the room, including myself. I told him I was done for the night. I said it clearly this time. No apologies, no smiles, just a statement. He looked and went for the first time, not angry, just irritated, like I had broken a rule. He stepped aside enough for me to pass and muttered something I couldn't hear. I walked away without looking back. My heart was racing, but my head felt numb. I didn't stop until I was halfway down the block. When I got home, I sat on my bed fully dressed and stared at the wall. I kept thinking about that nod, how easily the bartender had handed me back to the situation, how quickly safety became conditional. I unmatched him immediately. His profile disappeared without delay. The next day, I went back to that bar with a friend. Daytime. Different shift. I told the story quietly, casually, like I wasn't sure it mattered. The bartender on duty frowned and said they took safety seriously, said I should have said something sooner. I didn't argue. Nothing else happened after that. No messages, no stalking, no escalation. Just that moment burned into my memory. The way asking for help didn't work. The way being in public didn't matter. The way familiar places can still close ranks against you. I still go out, I still meet people. But I never assume the room is on my side anymore. I never assume help will come just because I ask for it quietly. Sometimes the scariest part is the person you're with. It's realizing that everyone else already decided it's not their problem. I didn't think it would turn ugly because it didn't start sharp. It started small, almost playful, the kind of teasing people do when they think it shows comfort. That's how it got past my guard. If she had been rude right away, I would have left without thinking twice. Instead, it slid in slow, wrapped in smiles and laughs, until I was already knee-deep in trying to convince myself I was overreacting. We matched on Tinder after midnight, one of those tired swipes where you barely register the faces anymore. Her profile had a blunt edge to it. Short bio, sarcastic tone. I figured she was just confident. Our messages had that same bite, but it felt mutual at first. Back and forth jokes, light jabs, nothing personal. I thought it would be fun in person, someone who could keep up. We met at a late-night diner off the highway, neon sign buzzing, parking lot half empty. I liked it because it was casual. No expectations, just food and talking. She was already inside when I got there, sitting in a booth, scrolling her phone with one hand and stirring a drink with the other. She looked up when she saw me and smirked like she was already judging. We ordered food and started talking. Right away, she commented on my clothes. Said I dressed like I was trying not to be noticed. I laughed it off and made a joke about comfort. She shrugged and said sure, if that's what I was calling it. It stung a little, but not enough to matter. I told myself she was just dry. Then it kept going. She picked at everything. How I talked. How I paused before answering. How I chose what to order. She asked why I took so long to decide, then said it was annoying. I smiled, nodded, tried to steer the conversation somewhere else. Every time I did, she pulled it back to me. I told myself she was testing boundaries. Some people do that. Seeing what you can take. I didn't want to fail some imaginary test by getting defensive. The food came. She barely touched hers. She kept watching me eat, commenting on it. Said I chewed loud. Said I looked tense. Said I probably always looked like that. I laughed again, but it was getting harder. My jaw hurt from clenching without realizing it. I tried to talk about her. Asked about her job. She answered briefly, then turned it back around, asking why I asked questions like that. Said it felt scripted. Said I probably did this on every date. I said I was just trying to get to know her. She rolled her eyes. I noticed she kept glancing at her phone, not scrolling, just checking it like she was waiting for something. The screen would light up, she would read, then look back at me with a slightly different expression, like she had been given instructions. At some point, she said I seemed insecure, not as an observation, but as a statement. I told her I didn't think that was fair. My voice stayed calm. I didn't raise it. She smiled like that response pleased her. She leaned back in the booth and crossed her arms and started listing things she didn't like about me. Not huge things. Small cuts. My posture. My tone. My face when I listened. She said I looked like I wanted approval. Said it was unattractive. Said I probably couldn't handle criticism. I told her she was being harsh. I said it lightly, trying to keep it playful. She laughed and said I was proving her point. People in nearby booths were starting to glance over. Nothing obvious, but enough to notice. The diner was quiet enough that voices carried. I felt heat creep up my neck. I hated that I was starting to feel embarrassed in public over something I didn't even understand. I checked the time and said I was going to head out. She waved a hand dismissively and said sure if I couldn't handle honesty. I stood up halfway, then stopped. I don't even know why. Maybe pride, maybe confusion. Maybe I just wanted to finish the conversation instead of leaving it twisted. I sat back down. That was when it escalated. She leaned forward and said I had a temper. Said she could tell. Said guys like me always snapped eventually. I told her that wasn't true. I told her I didn't appreciate being talked to like that. My voice was still steady but louder now. I could hear it myself. She nodded slowly, eyes locked on mine like she was watching the timer count down. She kept going, said I was boring, said I was passive, said I was pretending to be nice. Each insult landed harder than the last because it felt deliberate, like she was stacking them carefully, one on top of the other, waiting for something to give. I felt my chest tighten, my hands curled into fists on the table before I noticed. I took a breath and told her to stop. I said I didn't come here to be insulted. A couple people nearby were definitely watching now. I didn't care anymore. She tilted her head and smiled. She said there it was. Something in me snapped then. Not rage, not violence, just frustration spilling over after being poked too many times. My voice jumped. I told her she was being cruel on purpose. I said she didn't get to talk to me like that. I pushed my chair back hard enough that it scraped loudly. The room went quiet in that way diners do when something happens. Forks paused midair. Heads turned. I realized too late how it looked. A guy standing up, voice raised, chair scraping. No one saw the slow build. They saw the moment. She stayed seated, calm as ever. She looked up at me and said that's what she needed to see. The words hit harder than any insult. She picked up her phone and tapped the screen like she was saving something. She didn't look scared. She didn't look upset. She looked satisfied. I stood there breathing hard, realizing I had just stepped into something I didn't understand until the clothes around me. I grabbed my jacket and walked out without another word, heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. Outside, the night air felt unreal, like I had walked into a different scene. My hands were shaking. I leaned against my car and tried to slow my breathing. I kept replaying the last few minutes, wishing I had left earlier, wishing I had stayed quiet, wishing I had done anything differently. My phone buzzed before I even started the engine. Unknown message. No greeting. Just a screenshot. It was a note app, time-stamped, my name at the top. Below it, bullet points, observations. One line described the moment I stood up. Another mentioned Ray's voice. Another said loss of control under pressure. At the bottom, a line that made my stomach drop. Reaction confirmed. I blocked the number immediately, but it didn't matter. The damage wasn't in the message. It was in the realization that the whole night had been a setup, that she had been pushing on purpose, not to argue, not to fight, but to see how I would break. The next day, I checked Tinder. Her profile was gone, unmatched, wiped, like she had never existed. A week later, a friend sent me a link to a post in a forum I had never heard of, anonymized, talking about behavioral stress testing in real-world dating scenarios. It described a case that felt too familiar. A subject pushed until reaction, then categorized. No name, no face, just data. I closed the page and didn't open it again. Nothing else happened. No public fallout. No messages. No consequences I could point to. Just the lingering feeling that somewhere, my worst 5 seconds were written down and labeled, stripped of context, and sealed as truth. I still think about how easy it was, how calm she stayed, how the room turned the moment I reacted, how quickly patience became guilt. I'd not raise my voice anymore, not because I'm afraid of losing control, but because I know someone might be waiting for it, watching, needing to see it. I used to think the scariest part of Tinder was the awkwardness. Like you show up, you sit there, you try to laugh at the right moments, then you go home and overthink everything you said. I didn't think about the tiny practical stuff, the boring stuff, the stuff you only notice when it gets taken away from you. Like your eye did, like the little card you never worried about until it isn't in your wallet anymore. We matched on a random weeknight when I was doom scrolling and telling myself I was totally fine being single. His profile looked normal in that annoying way where you can't really judge anything. Clean photos, smile that looked friendly, nothing weird in his bio. He messaged like a person who had done this a lot, confident but not super flirty. I said yes to meeting because I wanted something to do and my friends were busy. He suggested this small live music place that does cheap entry and has food trucks outside. I liked that idea because it meant we wouldn't be stuck sitting face to face the whole time. Plus, it was public, loud, lots of people, safe on paper. I told my friend where I was going anyway, because that's just what I do. When I got there, the line was short. The door guy was checking ids and putting wristbands on people who wanted to drink. The place smelled like spilled soda and smoke from the food truck grills. The kind of night where your hair ends up smelling like everything. He was already in line and waved me over like we were already a team. He was taller than I thought and spoke fast, like he didn't want the conversation to slow down. We got to the front, and the door guy asked for ID. I pulled mine out without thinking and handed it over with my card out for entry. The door guy barely glanced at it, but he did that thing where he holds it up to the light for half a second. Then he looked at my face, then back down. He handed it back. Except it didn't come straight back to me. It went into his hand first. I didn't even clock it as weird because it happened so quick. My ad ended up in his fingers and he laughed, like he was making a joke about being my manager or something. He looked at it longer than the door guy did. Not just the picture, the details. His eyes dragged across it like he was reading it for real. I reached for it and he pulled his hand back slightly, still smiling, still talking like the card was the main thing happening. He said something like he was just checking if I was legal for the wristband, like he was being funny. The door guy didn't react, just kept moving the line. Then he slid my ID into his pocket. It was so casual I almost convinced myself I imagined it. Like maybe he was just holding it for a second and would hand it back. But I saw the motion. I saw the corner of the card disappear into his jacket pocket, and then he turned and started walking inside like nothing happened. My stomach tightened instantly. I tried to keep my voice normal when I told him I needed it back. He smiled and kept talking about the band playing later, like he didn't hear me properly. I repeated it. He patted his pocket like it was still a joke, like it was cute. We moved into the crowd near the side wall, away from the stage. Music was loud enough that it made it harder to push the moment. That felt intentional. I told him again, more clearly, that I wanted my ID. He leaned in close like he was listening, then said something about handing it back later, like I was overreacting about a piece of plastic. I felt my face get hot, not from embarrassment, more from that weird shock when someone crosses a line and smiles while doing it, like they're testing how far they can go while pretending it's nothing. I kept my hand out, waiting. He didn't give it back. He just kept the conversation moving, asking me questions, pointing at the stage, acting like we were having a normal date. The more normal he acted, the more trapped I felt. Because if I made a scene, I would look dramatic to everyone around us. And if I stayed quiet, I was basically agreeing. I tried a different approach. I laughed lightly, like fine, joke over, give it back. He smiled wider. Still didn't move. I started scanning the room for staff. The door guy was still at the entrance, busy. Bartenders were slammed. People were packed shoulder to shoulder. It hit me that I couldn't just walk out, because even if I left the building, I couldn't get home without my ID if anything happened. I couldn't even buy a drink of water without it here, and I definitely didn't want him holding it while I tried to call a ride. He kept leaning closer when he talked, like he was trying to make me focus on him and not the pocket. Every time I looked down toward his jacket, he would shift his body slightly so his pocket turned away from me. Small movements, barely noticeable, but consistent. I asked him why he was doing that. He smiled like I was being cute and said it was just a joke. Then he said my full name out loud, like saying it made the whole thing normal. My heart dropped. I had told him my last name. He tapped his pocket again and said it like he was teasing me, like he was proud he knew it. He said my address too, not the full thing, but enough to make my skin go cold. He didn't say it like a threat. He said it like trivia. Like, wow, isn't it funny how much you can learn from a card? I felt my body go stiff. The music felt farther away. The crowd felt tighter. I wanted to turn and leave, but leaving without my eye, it felt like walking out without shoes on. Exposed. Wrong. I tried to reach for his pocket. Not aggressively, just a quick grab, like taking back what was mine. He caught my wrist gently and pushed my hand away, still smiling. Not hard enough to cause a scene, just enough to stop me. Then he leaned in and said something about boundaries, like he was a one being reasonable. That was when I realized he was doing it on purpose, not as a joke, not as flirting, as control, quiet, sneaky control. I stepped back and told him I was going to the bathroom. He said he would come with me. I said no. He laughed like I was kidding. I walked anyway, weaving through people, and he followed behind me for a few steps before stopping near the bar. In the bathroom, I locked myself in a stall and texted my friend that I needed help. My hands were shaking so much I kept typing wrong. I tried to think of a plan. I thought about going to the door guy and explaining, but I imagined him shrugging like it was his problem. I thought about asking a bartender, but they were busy and I was afraid they would treat it like drama. I walked out of the bathroom and went straight to the door guy anyway. I kept my voice low and explained that my date had my eyed and wouldn't give it back. I said it plainly, trying not to sound panicked. The door guy looked at me for a second, then looked past me like he was checking if my date was watching. Then he said something like I should handle my own issues. He didn't say it mean just bored, like I was asking him to solve a tiny couple problem. I felt this horrible drop in my chest, like the room had just chosen sides and I was on the winning one. I turned and saw him leaning against the wall near the bar, watching me. He didn't look angry. He looked entertained, like he was watching a game he set up. I walked back toward him because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't want to be stuck in that place all night, but I also didn't want to leave without my eyed. He smiled and asked if I was okay. He said my first name again, soft, like he cared. I told him I was leaving. I told him to give me my ad right now. My voice shook a little, but I didn't care anymore. I saw a couple people nearby glance over. He sighed like I was being difficult. Then he reached into his pocket slowly, like he was finally going to do the normal thing. My heart lifted for half a second. But instead of handing it to me, he held it up between two fingers and looked at it again, taking his time. He said something about how he could drop it, and it would get lost in the crowd, like it was a funny thought. He kept talking while holding it, like he was stretching the moment. I reached for it again, and he pulled it back, then finally placed it in my hand, but not all the way. His fingers stayed on it for a second too long, like he didn't want to let go. Like he wanted me to feel that he could take it again whenever he wanted. I yanked it fully into my palm and shoved it into my wallet so fast I almost bent it. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't explain. I just turned and walked straight out. Outside, the air hit my face and I realized I had been holding my breath. My hands were still shaking. I walked fast toward the streetlight, pulled out my phone, and ordered a ride. I kept checking behind me because I couldn't stop imagining him following. He didn't. The ride came and I got in without looking back. The next day he texted like nothing happened. Like we had a normal night. Like pocketing my ed was a funny moment we could laugh about later. I blocked him immediately. Nothing else happened after that. No messages from new numbers. No random sightings. Just the memory of my name in his mouth, my address in the air, my ed disappearing into his pocket like it belonged to him. The whole thing lasted maybe 15 minutes, but it stretched in my head into something bigger, something I still feel in my shoulders when I hand my eye to anyone now. I realized something was wrong before I realized what it was. Not in a sharp way, not a panic moment. More like a slow pressure building behind my eyes, the kind you get when you know a joke is about you but no one has said your name yet. That's how the night felt. Like I had stepped into the middle of something already moving. We matched on Tinder that afternoon. Quick replies, nothing deep. She suggested meeting at an outdoor beer garden near the old rail yard, a place with long picnic tables and food trucks that circle like vultures. I liked it because it was loud and open and full of strangers. Felt safer than a quiet bar. I told a friend where I was going anyway because habits stick. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at one of the long tables with a drink and her phone resting face up beside it. She waved like she had been watching for me. I sat across from her, the table scared with old carvings and spills. The air smelled like fried food and dust. Conversation came easy, almost too easy. She had a way of asking questions that made me answer before I thought about it. Not big secrets, just personal stuff. The kind you don't usually share right away, but doesn't feel dangerous in the moment. Where I grew up, why I moved, what I missed about home. I didn't notice how fast it was happening until later. She listened closely, nodded, smiled at the right times. Sometimes she would glance at her phone, tap the screen, then put it back down. I assumed she was texting a friend or checking the time. Everyone does that. About 10 minutes in, a guy walked past our table and slowed down. He looked at me and smiled like he recognized me. I smiled back out of reflex, even though I didn't know him. He leaned in slightly and said something about the town I grew up in. Mentioned it by name, said he had family there. My stomach tightened. I told him, yeah, small world, laughed awkwardly. He nodded and walked off like nothing happened. I turned back to her, expecting confusion or surprise. She just smiled and took a sip of her drink. I told myself it was coincidence. The town wasn't tiny. People talk. Maybe I mentioned it louder than I thought. The place was crowded. Sound travels. We kept talking. I mentioned my job, complained lightly about the hours. She asked follow-ups that showed she was paying attention. I felt seen in a good way, like she cared. Then another person approached. This time it was a woman carrying food. She stopped at the end of our table and asked me if I liked what I did or if it drained me. The phrasing was exact, the same words I had just used minutes earlier. She smiled kindly, like this was casual conversation. I answered politely, but my heart was beating faster now. She nodded, said that made sense, and walked away. I looked around, suddenly aware of how many people were nearby, how closed the tables were, how many phones were out. I laughed it off again, telling myself I was being weird. She asked if I wanted another drink. I said maybe later. She nodded and checked her phone again. Tap. Screen dark. A third person came by, this one older, holding a beer. He leaned on the table like we were old friends and mentioned my sister. Not by name, but by the thing I had said about her earlier. The detail. The reason she moved back home. He said it like it was common knowledge. My throat went dry. I asked him how he knew that. He laughed and said word travels fast. Then he clinked his cup against the table and moved on. I turned to her fully now, my smile gone. I asked what was going on. She tilted her head like she was surprised by the question. She said people here were friendly. She said I had an interesting story. She said it was a social place. None of that explained how strangers knew things I had only said out loud to her minutes earlier. I stopped talking about myself after that, gave shorter answers, changed topics. She noticed immediately. She leaned forward slightly, asked if I was okay. Her phone lit up again. She glanced at it and smiled, then looked back at me with a softer expression. Another guy approached. This one mentioned my old apartment. The neighborhood, the thing I hated about it, the weird noise at night. I had mentioned it in passing, barely a sentence. He joked about it like he had been there himself. I felt exposed, like my insides were being passed around without my permission. I stood up and said I was going to grab water. I needed to move. She said okay and stayed seated. As I walked toward the drink stand, I felt eyes on me. People looked up from their phones. Some nodded at me. Others whispered. I didn't hear words, just the sound of attention shifting. At the stand, a woman handed me a cup and asked if I missed my dad. The question hit like a punch. I had mentioned him once, briefly. I had said anything emotional, but she said it gently, like she knew the weight behind it. I didn't answer, I just stared at her. She looked confused for half a second, then smiled apologetically and turned to the next person in line. My hands were shaking so badly the water sloshed over the rim. I didn't go back to the table right away. I stood off to the side, trying to breathe. I pulled out my phone and checked messages from my friend. Nothing. I typed something, then deleted it. I didn't even know how to explain what was happening. When I went back, she was scrolling, phone tilted toward her. When she saw me, she locked the screen and smiled. Asked if everything was good. I told her I was going to head out. I didn't explain. I didn't apologize. I just said it calmly, like stating a fact. She frowned slightly, then nodded. She said okay. Didn't argue. Didn't ask why. She stood up too, grabbed her bag. As we walked toward the exit, another person approached us. This one mentioned the reason I don't like driving at night. The thing that happened years ago. The thing I never bring up unless I'm comfortable. I stopped walking. I turned to her and asked how many people she had told. My voice was steady, but my chest felt tight. She looked at me for a long second. Then she smiled in a way that felt different from before. Less friendly. More satisfied. She said she liked getting second opinions. She said people notice things you miss about yourself. I didn't know what to say to that. I didn't want to hear more. I walked out without waiting for her. The night air felt sharp. I kept moving until the noise faded. My phone buzzed once as I reached the street. Unknown message. No greeting. Just a sentence referencing something else I had said earlier that night. Something small. Something harmless. Something that should not have been shared. I didn't reply. I blocked the number. I ordered a ride and stood under a streetlight watching cars pass, heart pounding. The next day, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she had friends there. Maybe she was telling people things as a joke. Maybe it was all coincidence stacked too neatly. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been a topic, not a person. Something discussed in real time, passed from mouth to mouth while I sat there thinking I was on a date. I unmatched her later that day. Her profile disappeared instantly, like it had never existed. Nothing else happened after that. No messages, no follow-ups, just a lingering sense that privacy isn't what I thought it was. That sometimes when you open up, you aren't just talking to one person. You're feeding a room. I still think about the way they approached me, casual, confident, like they had permission. The second he said it, the night changed shape, not like a jump scare or a loud moment. It was quieter than that. It felt like someone slowly turning down the sound on the world while my ears kept ringing. I didn't react right away, which still bothers me. My body froze before my brain could catch up, and by the time I understood why my chest felt hollow, it was already too late to pretend nothing happened. We meshed earlier that week, nothing dramatic. He was normal in a way that felt safe. Morning photos to decent messages, no pushing. I like that. I picked the place, a small cafe that stays open late and pretends it's a bar after dark. Low lights, chipped mugs, music low enough to hear your own thoughts. I chose it because I had been there 100 times and knew exactly where the exits were. I got there early and grabbed a table near the wall. He showed up on time, smiled easy, sat across from me without crowding. The beginning was fine, genuinely fine. We talked about work, about random shows, about how weird dating apps feel now. Nothing personal. Nothing deep. I remember thinking this might be the rare normal one. He asked where I lived in a general way. I answered the way I always do, vague and careful. Just the area, nothing specific. He nodded and didn't push. I relaxed a little after that. We ordered drinks. I watched his hands out of habit. They stayed on the table, open, relaxed. No weird energy. The cafe was busy enough to feel safe, but not loud. People typing on laptops, a couple talking quietly, the barista wiping the counter again and again. We talked for maybe 30 minutes before it happened. We were mid-conversation about how the city keeps changing, how places disappear overnight. I mentioned a park near my place, one I walked past a lot. Nothing identifying, just comment. He smiled and said something about how that park makes sense for someone who live on my street. My street. Not the neighborhood, not the area, the actual street name. My brain stuttered. I stared at him without meaning to. The words hung there heavy and wrong. I waited for the rest of the sentence for a correction, for him to laugh and say he meant something else. Nothing came. He kept talking like nothing had happened, like he had just said the weather. I couldn't hear what he was saying anymore. My ears felt stuffed. My heart started beating hard enough that I felt it in my throat. I went silent. He noticed that part. He stopped talking and tilted his head, confused, like he had lost me mid-thought. He asked if I was okay. I didn't answer right away. My mind was racing through possibilities so fast, none of them stuck. I had never told him my street. Not on Tinder. Not in messages. Not in person. I'd not post it. I'd not tag locations near my place. I'd not even tell friends sometimes. It's one of my rules. I finally asked how he knew that. My voice sounded calm to my own ears, but my hands were shaking under the table. He looked genuinely puzzled. He said maybe I mentioned it earlier. He laughed lightly, like it was a silly misunderstanding. He said names stick with him sometimes. That explanation didn't fit. It didn't even come close. I told him I was sure I hadn't said it. He shrugged and said maybe he mixed it up with someone else. The way he said it was casual, dismissive, like I was making a big deal out of nothing. I couldn't tell if he was lying or if he truly didn't understand why this mattered. Both options scared me. The rest of the cafe felt farther away now. I noticed how close the table was to the wall behind me, how his phone sat face down but within reach, how the barista glanced over and then away. Everything felt sharper, louder in my head. I tried to ground myself, asked about his job again. He answered normally. Too normally, like the moment had passed for him already, like he didn't feel the shift at all. I couldn't stop thinking about my front door, my windows, the way the streetlight outside my place flickers at night, the fact that he had said the name like it was no big deal. I checked my phone under the table, pretending to read a message. Nothing there. I thought about texting a friend, but I didn't know what to say without sounding dramatic. I wasn't in danger right now. I was sitting in a cafe with people around. I told myself to stay calm. He leaned back and took a sip of his drink, watching me. His expression was neutral, almost bored. I wondered if he was waiting for me to react bigger. I wondered if the silence bothered him. I said I needed to use the bathroom and stood up. My legs felt stiff, like they didn't trust the movement. He nodded and stayed seated. In the bathroom, I stared at my reflection and felt stupid for not leaving immediately. But I also felt frozen, like leaving would confirm something I wasn't ready to name yet. I splashed water on my wrists and took a few slow breaths. When I came back, he was scrolling on his phone. He looked up and smiled again, easy and familiar. It didn't match the way my body felt at all. I sat back down but angled my chair slightly toward the aisle. I wanted a clear path out. I didn't explain. I didn't need to. He asked if I wanted another drink. I said no, he shrugged. Then he casually mentioned a corner store near my street, said something about how it closes early. That was the second hit. I felt my stomach drop hard. This was to slip anymore. This was to guess. He was naming places connected to my lived space like he had walked past them himself. I told him I was leaving. I didn't apologize. I didn't smile. I just said it plainly. He looked surprised this time. He asked why. I said I didn't feel comfortable anymore. I said it slowly so my voice wouldn't shake. He laughed softly and said I was overthinking. He said people know more than they realize. He said it's easy to connect dots online. He said it wasn't a big deal. That was when fear finally cut through the confusion. I stood up fully and grabbed my bag. I didn't wait for his response. I walked toward the counter to close out my tab, keeping my eyes forward. My hands were cold. As I passed him, he said my name, just my first name. Nothing threatening. But the way he said it made my skin crawl, like he was reminding me he had access to it. Outside, the air felt sharp. I walked fast, not toward my place, but the opposite direction. I kept glancing behind me even though I didn't hear footsteps. My phone buzzed once. A message from him asking if I got home safe. I didn't reply. I walked for 20 minutes before ordering a ride and making sure the pickup spot was anywhere near my street. When I finally got home later, I double-checked my locks, then sat on my bed fully dressed, heart still racing. I went through my social media that night, deleting old posts, changing privacy settings, removing tagged photos. I felt exposed in a way I couldn't explain to anyone without sounding paranoid. The next morning, I unmatched him. His profile was already gone. Nothing else happened after that. No messages. No showing up. No follow-ups. Just the echo of him saying my street name like it was nothing, like it was casual trivia instead of the line it crossed. I still think about how quiet I got, how my body knew before my brain did, how fast normal turned into something I couldn't ignore. I'd bud say where I live anymore, not even vaguely, and every time someone guesses too close, I feel that same hollow drop all over again. I didn't think pictures mattered that much. That's probably the dumbest sentence I can write now, but it's honest. Photos always felt like background noise to me, something people collect without thinking. I never worried about angles or timestamps or where light fell. I worried about saying the wrong thing, not looking bored, not spilling a drink on myself. Pictures were just proof you went somewhere. That's what I thought before that night rewired how I look at every camera around me. We matched on Tinder late afternoon. She messaged fast, lots of emojis, lots of excitement. It was a little more energy than I usually like, but not enough to be weird. She suggested a night market near the waterfront, food stalls, string lights, a little stage where local DJs play. I agreed because it was public and easy. Low pressure. I told a friend where I was going like always. She was already there when I arrived, standing near a mural, phone in hand, adjusting her hair like she was getting ready for something. She smiled a bit when she saw me and hugged me quick, then pulled back and immediately asked if we could take a picture together. She said she liked remembering first meetings. I hesitated for half a second, then said sure. It didn't feel worth arguing over. She held her phone out, angled it carefully, told me to stand closer. The camera clicked twice. She checked the screen, frowned, then took another. She didn't hand me the phone to look. She just nodded to herself and slipped it back into her pocket. The night moved on. Food was good, music loud enough to cover awkward pauses. We walked along the stalls, talked about random stuff. She kept her phone out a lot, but not scrolling. Opening the camera, closing it, opening it again. Every time we passed something with lights, she wanted another photo. Near the food trucks, by the water, under the string lights. I joked that we were turning the date into a photo shoot. She laughed and said memories fade faster than pictures. I didn't think anything of it. People document everything now. At one point, she suggested we walk closer to the edge of the waterfront where it was quieter. Still public, just less crowded. We leaned against the railing and talked. She asked me to stand beside her again and took another photo, this one with the dark water behind us. She checked it longer than the others, zoomed in slightly, then nodded. I remember thinking she was particular. That's it, particular. We stayed out maybe 2 hours total. Nothing dramatic happened. No arguments. No weird tension. We hugged goodbye near the entrance. She said she had fun. I said same. She said she would send the pictures later. I didn't really care if she did. The next day started normal. I went to class, then home. I was half asleep on my couch when there was a knock at my door. Not loud, not aggressive. Just firm. I opened it without thinking. 2 officers stood there. My brain didn't connect to anything at first. I thought maybe they had the wrong place. They asked my name. I nodded. They asked if they could ask me a few questions. My stomach dropped before I knew why. They told me there had been an incident near the waterfront the night before. Something serious enough that they were talking to people who had been in the area. They asked where I had been between certain times. They didn't say her name. They didn't mention Tinder. They just asked me to account for my night. I told them the truth. The night market, the food stalls, the railing by the water. I felt my mouth go dry as I said it, like the words themselves were incriminating. One of the officers wrote things down. The other nodded slowly. They asked if anyone could confirm I was there. I mentioned her. First name only. They exchanged a look. They asked if I had any photos from the night. I said no. They asked if anyone else might. That's when it clicked. They showed me a still image on a tablet. It was us. One of the photos she took. The one by the water. Timestamp visible in the corner. Location data too. My face clear. Her face partially turned away. The time matched the incident window almost exactly. My chest felt tight. I explained again. The date, the photos, how she insisted, how I didn't think anything of it. I told them I didn't know what happened near us. I told them I didn't see anything. I told them we were just standing there talking. They asked where she was now. I said I didn't know. I hadn't heard from her since. They left after a while, polite but serious. Told me they might follow up. My apartment felt wrong after that. Too quiet, too exposed. I sat on my couch staring at the wall, replaying every moment she lifted her phone. I checked Tinder. Her profile was gone. I messaged her number. It didn't deliver. Later that night, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A message with one image attached. It was another photo from the night, this one taken without me noticing. Me leaning on the railing alone, looking down at the water. Timestamp again, a few minutes after the other one. No text, just the image. I didn't reply. The next day, the police came back. More questions. They asked about the photos, how many she took, where she stood, whether she ever left my side. I answered everything as clearly as I could. They showed me another image I hadn't seen before. This one from farther back, grainier. It looked like someone else took it, but the angle matched where she had stood earlier. They asked if I knew anyone else who could have taken it. I didn't. Days blurred, my routine collapsed into waiting. Every knock made my heart jump. I kept thinking about how eager she was to capture moments, how she always checked the screen before moving on, how she positioned us with landmarks behind us. Eventually, they told me I was the suspect. Not officially, but they still needed my statement on record. They still had the photos. They still had my face tied to that exact time and place. The incident never made the news in detail, just vague reports, enough to keep the knot in my stomach tight. I'd never heard from her again. No apology, no explanation, no confirmation she was even real the way I knew her. I deleted Tinder after that, not dramatically, just quietly, like closing a door that shouldn't have been opened that wide. I still avoid cameras when I can, still step out of frames without meaning to. Every time someone suggests a photo, my shoulders tense before I can stop it. I think about timestamps, about angles, about how easily a smile can turn into a marker on someone else's timeline. Pictures don't feel harmless anymore. They feel like evidence waiting for a story to land on them. I knew the date was ending before he said anything, but not because it went bad. It was the opposite. It went smooth in that empty way where nothing sticks. No sparks, no arguments, no awkward silences big enough to point at. Just two people moving through the motions. I remember thinking it would be an easy goodbye, one of those nights you forget by the weekend. I was already planning what snack I would eat when I got home. That's why what happened at the end hit so hard. I wasn't braced for anything sharp. We matched the night before. Nothing deep. He sent short messages, polite, kind of formal in a way that felt intentional. His profile was clean. No jokes, no edge, just a couple photos and a bio that sounded neutral enough to be safe. I said yes because I was bored and he did set off any alarms. We met at a tea place that stays open late for students. Lots of plants, quiet music, long wooden tables. I picked it because it felt calm and because I knew the staff. I got there early and sat near the window, watching people walk by, feeling relaxed. He showed up on time, smiled politely, sat across from me without crowding. He spoke clearly, calmly, like he had practiced. The first half hour was easy. We talked about work, about how weird apps feel now, about how hard it is to tell what people want anymore. Nothing personal, nothing revealing. I noticed he asked questions in a very even rhythm, like he was spacing them out on purpose. He kept his phone on the table, face down, but close to his hand. Every few minutes he would tap it lightly, not unlocking it, just touching it like a habit. I didn't think much of it. People fidget. He asked about my live situation in a general way. I gave a vague answer. He nodded and didn't push. He asked about my schedule. I answered. He asked what I did to relax. I answered. Each time, he nodded, absorbed it, moved on. No reactions that showed surprise or interest. Just acknowledgement. It felt less like a conversation and more like being processed. About an hour in, I checked the time and said I should probably head out soon. He agreed immediately, like he had been waiting for that cue. No hesitation. No attempt to stretch the night. That should have been my second warning. We stood up together and walked toward the door. The place was quieter now. Only a few people left, typing on laptops, the barista wiping the counter slowly. I grabbed my bag and turned toward him to say goodbye. That's when he stopped me. Not physically, just with words. He said the date was finished, said it calmly, like stating a fact. Then he said I didn't qualify. I laughed at first because my brain couldn't place the sentence anywhere familiar. It didn't sound like rejection. It sounded like an evaluation result. I asked what he meant. He didn't raise his voice, didn't look annoyed. He explained that he had criteria, that he was careful about who he spent time with, that the evening had been informative. Then he said my profile had already been flagged. The word flagged made my stomach drop. I asked flagged where. He said on the app. He said it like it was obvious, like I should know what system he was talking about. He explained that some people misuse platforms, that patterns get noticed, that he contributed feedback. He said it calmly, almost gently, like he was doing me a favor by explaining. I felt heat rush to my face, not anger, shock. I asked what he had flagged. He said inconsistency, presentation mismatch, unclear intent. The words sounded like something from a report, not a date. I told him I didn't understand. He nodded like that response fit his expectations. He said most people did. He picked up his phone and showed me the screen for half a second. I didn't see details, just a form, checkboxes, a progress bar. Then he locked it again. He said the process was anonymous, said it helped keep the app functional, said people like him volunteered time, said it wasn't personal. It felt very personal. I asked if that meant I would be banned. He said not necessarily. Said it depended on volume. Said he was the only one who did this. Said the app trusted certain users more than others. The way he said trusted made my skin crawl. I asked why he told me. He said transparency mattered. Said he didn't want me to wonder why things changed. Said it was better to know. I stood there gripping my bag strap so hard my fingers hurt. My mind was racing through my profile, my photos, my bio, my messages, trying to spot what could be misread, what could be used against me. I asked if he'd done this before. He said yes, said it helped refine matches, said it saved time for everyone. I realized then that the date had never been about seeing if we clicked. It was about testing me against something I never agreed to be measured by. I told him I was uncomfortable. I said he should not be doing that. My voice shook despite my effort to keep it steady. He looked surprised for the first time, not alarmed, just mildly confused. He said discomfort was part of feedback cycles, said growth required friction. That was when fear finally edged past confusion. I didn't argue. I didn't ask more questions. I turned and walked out without another word. The bell over the door chimed too loud. The night air hit my face like a reset. I walked fast, not toward my place, just away. My phone buzzed halfway down the block. A notification from Tinder. Account review in progress. My hands went cold. I stopped under a streetlight and opened the app. A message said my account was temporarily limited pending review. No explanation, no timeline, just that. I felt stupid standing there, rereading it like it might change, like this wasn't real. The next day, my account was still limited. I couldn't message, couldn't match, couldn't change anything. Just wait. I emailed support. Generic response. High volume. Safety systems. No details. I thought about him tapping his phone, the checkboxes, the calm explanation, how practiced he sounded, how sure he was that this was normal. A week later, my account was restored. No apology. No explanation. Just access again like nothing happened. But something was different. My matches slowed. Conversations died faster. Profiles that used to appear didn't anymore. Maybe coincidence. Maybe algorithm. Maybe paranoia. But the timing sat wrong in my chest. I still think about how easily he said I didn't qualify, like I had applied for something without knowing it existed, like my present had been assessed and logged and quietly weighed. I deleted Tinder after that. Not dramatically. Just one night, thumb hovering, then gone. Nothing else happened. No messages from him. No follow-up. Just that single sentence echoing in my head every time I open an app or fill out a form or swipe past a face. I didn't qualify for him, but I also didn't agree to be judged like that.